shoot, I know I forgot something, but oh well.
Send out the link.
Yep. And
Good evening, Reverend. Would you believe it's Dr. Doom?
What's on your evil mind?
Hold your insulting tongue and mark my words well.
How about this rumor that you are really hired, Mr. Stark?
hello and welcome. Oh no. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles. There we go. Do that. And I am your host, Roddykat, and you can find me at Roddykat on.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, we'll let that do his thing. Oh yeah, I got back to perfectly. Hey. Anyway, I am your host, Roddykat. You can find me at Roddykat on Twitter. You can find me at News Nurse Need on Twitter. You can also find me at CBCaps on Instagram. The sound effects that you have heard have been provided by our man in Brooklyn, 1agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram.
What's up, everybody?
Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at?
Although I am not in Brooklyn as we speak.
Exactly, but he still represents.
Still in New York.
Yes.
Still in New York.
Step represents BK to the fullest.
There you go.
Not with us tonight, which I did say I was gonna probably stop doing this after a while, but whatever. PC_Dirt on Twitter, Pop Culture Network on Twitter, Pop Culture Net on Twitter, popculturenetwork.com, and all those umbrella sites they're in. Also, Byte, the Vine replacement, and as comic book reviews. And also, not here tonight is Tim DOGG98 on Twitter, CB Cron on Twitter, which is the Comic Book Chronicles Twitter account, The Click Nation on Twitter, theclicknation.com. That's DKLIQNATION. Also, Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off.
That's right. We may end up pushing their info to the end of the show since they haven't come on the show in a while. You know, although Doug has been more recently, PC_Dirt has far more recently than Tim Dog.
Well, yeah, this is true. So we'll see about that. But
we'll probably just push them to the end of the show just so that we get their plugs in.
Yeah, maybe. But you can find this here program at the Cold Slither Podcast Network. That's CSPN.us.
Do it today.
You can also find this here program on your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the Cold Slither Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. So, yeah, folks, we are back again. Well, let me phrase that. So, comics are still starting to kind of filter out, but this week's crop is not much to go on. It's mostly like collections and stuff, and so there wasn't really much that we were inclined to read.
Right, at least Marvel-wise, in terms of my own personal pull list, I did have one new book come out from IDW, and that is Walter Simonson's Ragnarok.
Oh, right.
So I did have that one book come out, but otherwise, I'm not pulling really any DC at this point. And in terms of indie stuff, Ragnarok did come out for me, but it's slim pickings out there this week, folks.
Yeah, and I honestly totally forgot to check, because there's probably is something out there that I would have read from Image or somebody, but I just didn't check, if I'm being honest. So,
yep.
Because I didn't really see much from the big two, and it's like, well, I don't know what else. I know the other books I'm reading just kind of in various states. So.
No, absolutely, and it's still a tough time to be out there trying to figure out what to do comic book wise. Like I still haven't gotten my books from last week, so it's tough right now. There were some Marvel digital books. It's not much. DC had a few books out this week. There is a GI Joe out this week. Um, from was IDW's doing GI Joe now?
Oh wait, yeah.
And
Wait, because there was one from last week, so that means they put another one. So because I'm reading GI Joe, but yeah, I didn't know they put another one out this week.
it was the Real American Hero. That's the
Oh, the Larry Hama
continuation
one.
of
Okay.
the old, right? Yeah, exactly. It's the Larry Hama continuation of the old series. So, yeah, there's a few books for us to take a look at, but it's the pickings are pretty slim for this week. So, anyway, so that means we are discussing something else.
This is these, and yes, I am excited about this because this is probably one of my the starting of one of my all-time favorite groups. Actually, my favorite group in Marvel, period, the West Coast Avengers. We will be doing tonight the 1984 miniseries, the West Coast Avengers, that led into the ongoing series the next year. And like I said, I'm excited about this because, like I said, any chance I get to read this is always good for me because, like I said, my favorite group. I love the Wackos.
I was about to say, shout out to Marvel Unlimited, even though we are not sponsored by Marvel or Marvel Unlimited. This is the way that folks like me who do not own these issues are able to read this of many, many moons later after their initial publication. So that it's a good thing that I finally sprung for a Marvel Unlimited.
Yeah, as we've said before, it is a quite useful tool even if you do have the books around you. Because goodness knows, I'm like, if you're like me, I'm like, you know what, I don't feel like going and trying to pull out my books. Even if I can find my books, I still can't at this point. And I'm hoping they're that I hope they are. But that being said, I don't want to just have to keep going and pulling them out, even though it'd be fun to do.
Sure. So that means this week we will be starting with. Can I jump to the news?
Yes, I'm kind of stalling a little bit, but yes. So yes, we will be starting off with the news. And as we do about this time, we're going to be starting off with the cinematic news. First up, Marvel Superfan maps out. Let me move Agent 70's thing out of the way so that y'all don't see that. Marvel Superfan maps out chronological order for every single scene in the MCU. So a dedicated Marvel Superfan has shared a comprehensive list of every single MCU scene arranged in chronological order. Disney Parks reviewer Tony Goldberg proudly announced his staggering achievement on Twitter as he posted 4 screenshots mapping out each individual scene from the 23 MCU movies released so far in a timeline format. And you can see said tweet right there if you are watching the video for this here episode. And sometimes you should, because sometimes, hey, there's some good stuff you'll see. But yeah, he says, well, nerds, I effing did it. Took me a global pandemic and a damn quarantine, but I did it. I figured out the precise chronological order of all the MCU movies so far, quotes, by scene, and I'm out of my G-dang-gone mind, and I don't know why I'm doing that when I curse probably more than this person's doing. You're welcome. So it's pretty, that's again.
Now we need someone to fact check it. We need someone to proofread his work.
Yeah, you know what? If you want to go for it, go for it. I'm not touching it. But for what I looked at it, it seems relatively legit. I don't know. Like I said, that's a lot to kind of go through. Because if you like, and just go in there, for a quick second, like it starts off with the prologue of Thor: The Dark World, stops at 3:45. Flashback singles of Thor Ragnarok at 1 hour 19:33, 13 to 54 seconds, and it kind of goes from there. So basically, it starts with Thor, then Black Panther, then Captain America: Winter Soldier. Weirdly enough, most of Captain America First Avenger, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the beginning of that, Ant-Man and Wasp. So it just kind of goes from there. I'm not going to go through all of that. It looks like it also says, from according to one of these other tweets that I'm seeing on the side, it does not cover. It just covers the movies, so it doesn't cover Netflix TV shows, and that's probably obvious. And no ABC, which means no Agents of Shield.
Mm-hmm.
So, sure, makes sense.
All
Yeah,
right.
if you are so inclined, you can go check that out for yourself. Next up.
All right, next up, Gray Matter Art is teaming with Gallery Nucleus to present 5 fine art geeklies of concept art from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's concept art by Ryan Meinerding from Spidey Homecoming and Avengers Endgame, Thor concept art by Charlie Wen, Rodney Fuentebilla produced some concept art for Captain America Civil War, and there is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 concept art by Jackson C. Each measures 12 by 24 inches and is limited to an edition of 150 pieces, and each costs $45. And this is available through, I guess, the Great Matter Art website or Gallery Nucleus.
Probably, yeah. Let's see. Does it actually say in here? Because I don't think it does say. Oh yeah, the Gray Matter Shop.
There you go. It's available at the Great Matter Shop. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Next up, Marvel Studios to regain Daredevil TV rights in late 2020. So
Hold on.
Oh.
About time.
Yeah, indeed. What they will do with it, we will absolutely see. But Marvel Studios won't have much time to wait until Daredevil can rejoin the MCU. Via Screen Rant, the fan campaign known as Save Daredevil has calculated that only 6 months remain until the rights to Daredevil transfer from Netflix back to Marvel. Due to the nature of the contract between Netflix and Marvel, the latter isn't able to use characters like Daredevil, Luke Cage, and Jessica Jones until 2 years after the cancellation of their respective shows. Netflix canceled Daredevil in late 2018, meaning Marvel will regain the rights to the characters in November 2020, unless they stealth pulled off a show somehow during all of this, which I don't believe they have. So, but anyway, so as Screen Rant points out, Marvel will also have required the rights to Luke Cage and Iron Fist at that point. As both shows were all canceled in October 2018, the rights to Jessica Jones and The Punisher will follow in February 2021, with Netflix having canceled its final 2 Marvel series in February 2019. If this all goes according to the way it does, then in less than a year, all 5 franchises will be back in the Marvel fold.
Yeah, way less than a year.
Yeah. Now, again, like I said, and this article also puts it back up before we push this off, what are they going to do with it?
Right. Well, they now have time to make plans. So we'll see if they are reproduced in television form or if some of those characters, or if not all of the characters, make their way into the movies. So we'll see.
Yep. Next up.
All right, next up, apparently the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. time travel, spoiler alert, it comes with a major catch. So that's not the biggest spoiler. If you saw, I think, some of the previews of the upcoming or the current season of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is the last one, now these characters can time travel with a ship, but that ability comes with a catch. Apparently, as revealed in Know Your Onions, the latest episode, the team has only a specific window of time in which they can stay in one particular period. Worse, they have no way to know how long they have or when the ship will make another time jump, with or without them.
So it's Quantum Leap.
Pretty much.
I was going to say Sliders, but it's like, no, there's something that's actually probably could still work, but yeah, but it's a little different. Anywho, yeah, I need to catch up. I keep saying I need to catch up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it's going to take a minute. Next up, J.K. Simmons' Spider-Man audition involved a major Marvel villain. J.K. Simmons, in the pantheon of comic book movie castings, few are as iconic or memorable as J.K. Simmons' turn as J. Jonah Jameson in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. Simmons managed to bring the fiery tempered editor-in-chief of the... You know what? We can pass this. Simmons was a recent guest on People TV's Couch Surfing, where he revealed that he had to go through a classic screen test to win over skeptical Sony executives. The producers and the people at Sony, they needed to be convinced because obviously there were a lot more high-profile actors that they had in mind that would help with the box office, Simmons said. It was very nerve-wracking. Let's see. It says for Simmons' screen test, he was required to read from the scene in which the Green Goblin attacked the Daily Bugle, interrogating Jameson about the identity of the photographer who takes Spider-Man's pictures. Like, I'm holding the script pages, reading the scene on the audition, but then at the same time trying to pretending I'm being lifted by the neck and choked. Simmons explained, imitating being throttled. So, yeah, I guess that's how that worked out. I would actually, sometimes I kind of want to see some of those, like, if they have those out there. Because I know that sometimes they would show those, like, the screen test, or sometimes they get parodied on Saturday Night Live, that kind of thing. But I would kind of like to see some of those screen tests. Just for giggles. I don't know. But that's just me. Anyway, next up.
All right, next up. As the Black Lives Matter protests continue across the country, in the midst of it, Marvel Studios issued a statement. On Twitter, they posted an image that read, "We stand against racism. We stand for inclusion. We stand with our fellow Black employees, storytellers, creators, and the entire Black community. We must unite and speak out." The statement comes off the heels of the death of George Floyd at the hands of police officers, the latest case of police brutality, which in this case sparked outrage globally. So I don't know if they were late to the party. I think there were other statements, but they were out there in the midst of it. So kudos to them.
So it's worth noting that so if you're watching the video, you can see the statement on the Twitter, but it's if you've seen Disney, Star Wars, Marvel comics proper, I believe they all use this exact same blanket statement.
Makes sense. They're all owned by the same parent company.
Exactly. So, and DC, which we will get to in a little while, but yeah, DC also has made statements, and other other companies have made statements. But yeah. So next up. John Boyega, I kind of hate this title, but still, whatever. John Boyega willing to give up his career to support George Floyd protests. I'm not sure what I don't like about it, because even though he did say what he said in the...
Yeah, exactly. What I was going to say, I think they're just quoting him, but yeah, I think it's an awkward title.
Yeah. So, if y'all did not know, one, John Boyega is a real one, and it seems like he always has been. And also, before I go into this, go watch Attack the Block, because I just watched it recently. It's pretty damn good. And which starts.
You said Attack the Block, right?
Attack the Block, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you said Attack the Box. I'm like, no, I think that's not the title.
No, I said Block, yeah. But no, it's pretty good because it was like basically his first film, and I think actually it was kind of funny because it's him and one of the dudes that plays in The Flash now is in that film, and also the Jodie Whittaker, who's now the Doctor in Doctor Who, was also in that film. So needless to say, there were some folks that kind of got launched out of there. Most notably John Boyega. But you could kind of see early on where he gets his swag from, because he was pretty good in that one. Anyway, regardless, a protest at Hyde Park in London was attended by John Boyega, where the Star Wars actor gave an impassioned speech to gathered protesters concerning the repeated reports of police brutality in the United States. Quote, "We are a physical representation of our support for George Floyd. We are a physical representation of our support for Sandra Bland. We are a physical representation of our support for Trayvon Martin. We are a physical representation of our support for Stephen Lawrence." Boyega said, "I'm speaking to you from the heart. Look, I don't know if I'm going to have a career after this, but F that." So, and Boyega, to his credit, Boyega's been out, and not just now. He's been out there well before this. So this is not like he's just doing this for whatever. He's been kind of going at it, at various times, in the past. So no one can really say that, this is just him
He's jumping on a bandwagon, right?
Right, exactly. No one can really say that. And like, I wish I had that other tweet that he said, because he was just like going at. Oh, I think there was a tweet out there was like, yeah, that Star Wars movie has y'all messed up, basically, because he was like, look, this is me, this is what I'm gonna do, and if you don't like it, whatever. So, like I said, he's been a real one. But he also says, I need you to understand how painful this is. He continues, I need you to understand how painful it is to be reminded every day that your race means nothing, and that isn't the case anymore. And that was never the case anymore. Today is about innocent people who are halfway through their process. We don't know what George Floyd could have achieved. We don't know what Sandra Bland could have achieved. But today we're going to make sure that it won't be an alien thought in our young ones. Boyega at it. So, shout out to John Boyega, for real. So, for that, like I said, he's in the six. This is not the first time he's been out there about that. So don't get fooled. But on that note, actually, I'm gonna go ahead and take this next one already because they're kind of, since it's connected. Jordan Peele and more directors eager to cast John Boyega after protest speech. Quote, "We got you." Major Hollywood directors such as Jordan Peele, Edgar Wright, and Guillermo del Toro are standing up for John Boyega after the Star Wars actor gave an impassioned speech at the June 3rd Black Lives Matter protest in London's Hyde Park. Part of Boyega's speech found him contemplating whether or not to speak out against racism, but would have had a negative impact on his career. And we've kind of gone through what he said about that already, so we don't have to go onto it. But basically, Jordan Peele, the Oscar winner behind Get Out and Us, wrote to Boyega, "We got you, John," a message that was then retweeted by the Shape of Water Oscar winner Guillermo del Toro. Edgar Wright chimed in, "Have before and would again in a heartbeat. So proud of John before." While Michael W.A. Cherry, who won the Oscar this year for Best Animated Short Film, responded, "I would work with John Boyega and urge other non-black creators to affirm that they have his back as well." And then there's a bunch of other people who have also lent their supports and behind John Boyega after this. So I guess kudos to them. Hopefully some of these people were actually going to do that before all this happened, but that's a whole nother story, and I know that's cynical, so my apologies. Anyway, next up.
The director of the New Mutants has said he'd still love to continue with his original plan and complete a trilogy of X-Men spin-offs based on the New Mutants. The official New Mutants update Twitter shared a conversation between Josh Boone and SFX Magazine discussing the idea that the New Mutants will be a one-and-done movie. Boone explained, "Ultimately, after all this time, I was able to make my New Mutants film, and he's proud of it. But he's hoping for what he's hoping for now is that it will be successful enough so the studio will allow him to complete a trilogy that he has all planned out." Well, you know what? I wish him the best.
Yeah, right? Because, the movie hadn't even seen release yet. So while was able to make it, will people be able to see it? That is the question. Next up. Titans Jason Todd says being killed by the Joker would be a dream. Titans Kieran Walters would like to see his character Jason Todd Robin reenact several moments from the comics, including Todd's famous death scene at the hands of the Joker. Quote unquote, "Man, I obviously think one of the most iconic things." Wait, Lord. Okay, yeah, that's right. It would be pretty cool to have that sentence is really weird. It would be really cool to have the Batmobile stealing of the tires. Walters toured Comic Book Chronicles. That's a pretty memorable scene for me, I'm sure, for sure. So that would be fun. Obviously, the whole Joker thing would be a dream, ideal world. But yeah, we'll see. I'm so thrilled that the first script of the season, to get that first script of the season and see what happens. So yeah, there you go. Next.
All right. Next up, there is a rumor that representatives of WWE superstar Sonya Deville, real name Daria Ray Baronato, are pushing hard for her to land acting roles, including that of DC's Kate Kane, following Ruby Rose's departure from the CW's Batwoman. There may be other stories that are related to this.
Yes, but I didn't put any in the thing. But yeah, there are other people, and we talked about last week. Stephanie Beatrix wanted it, but
Right.
yeah. So
I was about to say, I don't know if you have a story in there, but I think it was a rumor that they may actually write Kate Kane out of the story.
Yeah, I think I did see that one, but I didn't pull it.
Okay, so I mean, essentially, if you didn't pull it, essentially the rumor now is that the folks in the Berlantiverse uh, are possibly going to be writing Kate Kane out of the show and placing a new character into the role of Batwoman.
Yeah. So
We will see. That's all we can say.
yeah, pretty much. Like, and I think there was another article about kind of reacting to that, but that's kind of how that works. Next up, former Flash actor shot with rubber bullets in Los Angeles protests. Kendrick Sampson, who played Dominic Lance in The Flash, and as well as Jesse in Vampire Diaries, has reported that he was present at protests in Los Angeles, and the police fired rubber bullets, several of which hit him. Demonstrations have been raging in some American cities after the death of George Floyd, an unarmed black man, at the hands of police in Minnesota. Sampson posted videos of the protests on his Instagram and was seen on news footage being shot with rubber bullets and hit with police batons. So, yeah, this is the thing that's going on, folks. Next up,
Several several that have been working in. Ooh, we have Ken.
oh wait,
Oh no, we're back again.
There we go.
Oh,
Okay.
I love it. I love it. Camera problems. So, getting back to the story at hand, the UK and its governmental agencies have given the green light for film and television production to restart after being shut down due to the coronavirus, meaning specifically the Batman, amongst other things, can resume filming. Obviously, according as reported by The Guardian, the guidelines include social distancing and other safety training and temperature testing. So, at least these projects can resume. When they're able to, can resume production.
Yep, indeed. Next up, let's see. New Harley Quinn movie project in the works at Warner Brothers, according to a report. Warner Brothers may be preparing for the next big screen appearance of Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. According to DCEU's Mythics, Jeremy Conrad, I'm assuming this is a rumor site, the studio has begun early discussions on where Harley Quinn will appear next in the DC Extended Universe. Of course, this could mean Harley Quinn could star in her own solo movie or take part in another ensemble feature like this year's Birds of Prey. So, we'll see how that works out. Next up.
All right. Warner Brothers has quietly released an hour-long Batmobile documentary for free. It's an hour-long documentary centered on the Dark Knight's iconic vehicle without any announcement. The entire film is available online for all fans to see. While it touches upon the comic book history of the Batmobile, the documentary primarily seems to focus on its aesthetic evolution through film. When we say it's available online, available via
YouTube. It's on the Warner Brothers Entertainment's YouTube channel. So here's the fun thing, because I've seen this in the last week or so, and I thought it was like some fan documentary thing. I was like, okay, that's neat. Maybe I'll come back and check it out. I didn't know it was them proper doing that. So if you're so inclined, you can go check that out though. Next up, Static Shock co-creator reacts to show's racism episode going viral. Static Shock aired in the early 2000s, but is just as relevant as it was then as it is today. Dennis Cowan took to Twitter to express his gratitude after a user posted a clip from the season 1 episode Sins of the Fathers, which quickly went viral. over 49K likes. I had no idea people felt this way. Amazing. Karen wrote, a bright spot in a crazy world right now. So yeah, if you go check out Dennis Kyron's Twitter account, and you can go check out that clip. Or better yet, you know what? I can't remember if it's. I think it's on DC Universe. If you got that, go check out Static Shock, because it was a damn good show back in the day.
It is. I think it is.
Mm-hmm. Next up.
So apparently, while speaking with Premiere Magazine, director Patty Jenkins revealed that she passed on directing a Justice League film. If you go to the CBR story, it will further detail some of her reasoning behind turning down the project.
Yeah, what he said. So yeah, and I won't go into it, but basically says that it didn't connect with her. So too many characters, she, that kind of thing. So yeah, makes sense. If you ain't feeling it, don't do it. Some folks take things for the paycheck. Next up, HBO Max has no plans to add more DC Universe shows after Doom Patrol. So all the way back in July, it was announced that Doom Patrol had been renewed for a second season at not only its home streaming service of DC Universe, but also the brand new HBO Max. This is after speculation regarding what future could hold for DC Universe and its relationship with Warner Media's new flagship service. However, HBO Max has now confirmed that at this time, there are no plans for any other DC Universe originals to be brought over. So, I guess that means DC Universe is still gonna be around for a little bit longer. So, cool. Or, we can't really take much of anything from this. We just know that this is what this is. Next up.
Alrighty. Riverdale star Vanessa Morgan, the woman who plays Tony Topaz on the CW drama Riverdale, has shared her frustration at television shows for how they portray Black characters. While she didn't initially mention her show by name, she and other actors from the show have since brought some of Riverdale's issues to light. On May 31st, Morgan shared a statement about her frustration with media companies, many of whom have been sharing Black Lives Matter posts over the recent days as the worldwide protests against the police killing of George Floyd continue to grow. According to Vanessa Morgan, some companies are not practicing what they're currently preaching.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not only her, but actually Murray, who played Josie on the show, also came out. Now, mind you, and if you're watching the video, that Vanessa Morgan is the young black girl that is behind this other character that they have pictured here. I'm not sure why they did that, but hey, whatever it is what it is. Next up, Star Trek Voyager's Year of Hell episodes could have been a whole season, according to Brian Fuller. Which probably would have made some sense, I guess. Anyway, if the writers had their way, often considered the highlight of the series, the Year of Hell two-parter in Star Trek Voyager's fourth season injects messy timeline shenanigans and high drama into the series, which typically focused on less serialized, less intense stories than its immediate forebearer, Deep Space Nine. Great show, by the way. According to Brian Fuller, who talked about working on Voyager in a recent episode of the Inglorious Treksperts podcast, the initial concept was for the story to have these two-part stories comprise a whole season arc. The Year of Hell and the Beyond the Scenes drama not only to craft episode, but that season was fascinating because we wanted Year of Hell to last the entire season, Fuller said. Wanted to see Voyager get its ass kicked every episode, and through that season was going to be marbled the story of Anorax and the time ship that was changing things. So we would go back to it every once in a while to remind the audience that that it is the larger story. But it was rejected because Deep Space Nine made Voyager co-creator and executive producer Rick Berman allergic to serialized storytelling, violently so. Which is sad, because Deep Space Nine did fine with it, so I don't know what his problem was. Either way, but then again, it is what it is. While Berman would eventually nix the idea, Fuller said, and I gotta stop saying that. Fuller said that it was animating one of the most exciting concepts to move through the Voyager's writer's room. So, yeah, we could have got more of a thing in Voyager, which probably could have made it a little bit better. Not saying Voyager was bad, but, you know, it just kind of, it had problems probably in scheduling and other things. Next up.
So next up, according to Ronald D. Moore himself, I presume one of the creators behind the 2000s reboot of Battlestar Galactica, he spoke to Collider about the original shape of the show's ending, and apparently there was a long 141-minute finale, but the three-parter that ended Battlestar Galactica way back in 2009 could have been even longer, as there was an original 4-hour concept for the finale. Apparently, the original cut, which clocked in at around 4 hours, was even more extensive, but the problem was that it wasn't as compelling, so they cut out, some of the stuff they felt was extraneous, but it could have been 4 hours, and apparently Moore sums it up in the article we have in our notes.
From what I understand, the ending they went with probably wasn't that much better. I have not seen the end of that BSG, but it started out great though. I loved it, but from what I understand, it kind of went a little off the rails. Anyway, next up, in the Lord of the Rings news, Sean Bean had to cheat during his Mordor meme speech.
One does not simply walk.
Exactly.
Into Mordor.
Exactly, and yeah, I was like, yes. As I said for another thing last night, the speech that launched 1,000 memes, basically. A majority of the Lord of the Rings trilogy cast plus. So I probably should have done this first. As a matter of fact, I'll come back around to it. But, so basically, the cast of Lord of the Rings just reunited this past weekend. Thanks to Josh Gad, who reunited via YouTube, his YouTube series apparently he has, and they met over virtually. So, and it was also a way to raise money for the charity No Kid Hungry. During the episode, which lasted almost an hour, Jackson dug into the famous Mordor speech made by Sean Bean's Boromir during the formation of the Fellowship. You know the one. It includes the lines, as Agent 70 just said.
One does not simply walk into Mordor. Its black gates are guarded by more than just orcs. There is evil there that does not sleep. The great eye is ever watchful.
Yep. So that one, y'all know that one. And of course that one does not went into like every other meme and its grandmother since then, or as of late, I guess. But yeah, it says there that that inspired speech that Sean had delivered at the end of the Council of Elrond was written for the night before. Jackson explained, "It's long, and we gave it to Sean the morning he would arrive." What Sean did, which I thought was really clever, is he got a printout of the speech taped to his knee.
I love it.
I know, right? It was on his knee, and when he did that scene, you'll see Jackson mimes Breen looking down, pretending to be deep in thought. If you watch the scene now, you'll see every time that Sean has to check the script. And now I have to go and watch Fellowship of the Rings just to see that. That's actually pretty damn clever, because it's like, okay, you don't necessarily know unless there's like some other signs or something bouncing off his eyes, or a Coke can gets left in the scene or something like that somebody finds. But that's pretty funny. So if y'all are like me eventually, and it's on HBO Max, if not saying this is a sponsor for the show, because it's really not, but I'm just saying it's out there. Those movies are out there, and if you don't already have it, go.
I wonder. I'm sorry. I was going to ask if HBO Max has the theatrical versions.
You know what? That's the part I didn't check. I'm glad you said that. I will probably check as you do the next one.
Well, I
But
was about to say the next one is related to
okay,
exactly
yeah.
to
So
what you did.
I could do that, and if you want to go ahead and check, go for it.
Right.
But
So
yes, Josh Gad, who never sleeps, apparently, according to this article writer, reunites Lord of the Rings cast for latest Zoom reunion. So this is basically what I just alluded to. And oh, I hate autoplaying things. I hate you with the passion. Ban them all. Anyway, um, Josh Gad, gathered hobbits, the wizards, the elves, and the wicked menfolk to go to YouTube, where they joke, talk, shop, reminisce, and just seem to really thoroughly enjoy each other's presence. I assume this video. Well, yeah. So this is a link to the video right here, and I guess this is for, as I previously said, for Josh Gad's podcast that he does, Reunited Apart. Well, I guess that's this one, but whatever else. But in the stream, Elijah Wood, Sean Austin, that's a typo there. Ian McKellen, Orlando Bloom, Viggo Mortensen, Liv Tyler, and more, along with director Peter Jackson, and presumably the kind doting ghost of Chair are co-talking just off screen. That is the article's writer doing this. But how does get? Okay, you know what? We're not going to get into that. But basically, yeah. So that's what happened, and we already told you that it was done for a charity reason, also. So you can go check that out on the YouTubes. And it's also, it looks like it's titled "One Zoom to Rule Them All: Reunited Apart, Lord of the Rings Edition," and Josh Gad. So you can go check that out at your leisure. I actually might check that out a little later. Next up, did you find?
yeah,
out?
I was just gonna say I can't confirm. I did pull up HBO Max to see the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. It doesn't say in any of the description that it is the extended edition, so I presume this is the theatrical edition.
Okay, yeah, and sometimes I've noticed last night that sometimes they'll pretty much have the theatrical front and center, and if it has an extended version, like it'll be down there where a trailer would be or something, like underneath where the cast would be, if they have like extras basically. So it may or may not. Who knows? If it doesn't have that, then it's probably just theatrical and they went with it.
Right. Doesn't appear that way.
Yeah. All right. Next up.
All right. Let's see. Back to the news. I clicked away from it, so I apologize.
That's fine.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is in development, really. So a sequel to Sonic the Hedgehog is in the works. Variety reports that Jeff Fowler, who helmed the 2020 film, is returning to direct the sequel from a script by Pat Casey and Josh Miller. The trade says it's confirmed its scoop with Paramount Pictures and Sega. Fowler also confirmed the news via Twitter. Great.
Yeah, I don't. Obviously, nowadays there are movies that doesn't necessarily need to be doing well to get sequels. We've known that for quite a while at this point. I don't know how this one went, but apparently there are people who actually like this movie, the Sonic movie. So I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know. And obviously, we know about the changes that they underwent with the original version that from a while back that they cleaned up and whatever. So good on them, I guess. Next up and final in our cinematic news, Cowboy Bebop Netflix series won't be a one-to-one adaptation of the original, surprising to no one. Cowboy Bebop Netflix series writer Javier Grillo Marxok, I guess, has revealed that the live-action show won't be directly adapting the entirety of the source material's 26-episode run, instead picking and choosing from certain classic characters and elements to help fit a wider narrative. You've got a show where you have 26 episodes that are full of very colorful villains, very colorful stories, very colorful adversaries, bounties, and all of that, Grillo told IO9. We're not going to go one-to-one on all of those stories because we're also trying to tell a broader story of Spike Spiegel and the Syndicate, Spike Spiegel and Julia, Spike Spiegel and Vicious, and all of that. So basically it sounds like this is just Spike Spiegel. They're focusing on Spike and not the rest of the cast. The series, which IO9 confirmed will feature hour-long episodes instead of the relatively bite-sized 22-minute should still include many of the bounty of the week villains that Spike and Co. have to hunt down for those precious oolongs. So yeah, take that for what you will, folks out there. Like some of that's kind of no surprise because those live action anime movies are all generally not great, and usually
Mm-hmm.
make some changes some kind of way in there. Not surprising this one. All right, so now we are going to go into the comic book news,
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
and we start off with Power Rangers Battle for the Grid to become the first fighting game with crossplay across 5 platforms.
That's big news.
Yeah, it is. And actually, so if y'all did not know, Power Rangers Battle for the Grid is a fighting game. As
Who's,
just so I
who's producing it?
you know what? I can't remember. It's some small, well, not small. I shouldn't say that, but
So it's not Capcom, and it's not the people who are behind like Tekken or
no, it's
any of the other big fighting game studios.
Inway. Inway are the developers, and it's publishing by, not surprising, Hasbro Gaming and Lionsgate Games because license.
Of
But
course.
yeah, and actually, like I said, when it came out, it was a little rough. But they've done some tweaking to it, and it's actually gotten a lot smoother. And I think the net code might be a little bit better as it is now. But now it's going crossplay. It's going to have to be better. Because that's an interesting thing. There's not a lot of big games don't even have crossplay at this point. So the game launches on Google Stadia as a part of June's collection of free games for a Stadia Pro subscriber, which is probably part of the reason why this is happening. And will feature crossplay with other platforms the game is already available on. That includes PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC via Steam. So, and that news came out from the Battle Grid's Twitter account. So, if you've played that game before, maybe you want to revisit it and get your thing on. Next up.
Mm-hmm. Marvel's Avengers developers have discussed representing disability and introducing a new superpowered non-player character. This is from Crystal Dynamics, the developer behind Marvel's Avengers, and publisher Square Enix, and they've revealed a new wheelchair-using superpowered NPC, which is one of the studio's many efforts to increase its representation of disability. Is it Professor X?
It is not.
I mean, seriously.
I mean, that could have been something they could have done, but it is an Avengers focused film, so that probably, so that couldn't have happened.
So, a blog dedicated to accessibility, staff from Crystal Dynamics explained how accessibility has increased in importance to the studio since efforts first began in 2013, and the studio has created a better understanding of the experiences of players who have different needs. Okay.
Yeah. So apparently the you can see the picture here, and the character's name is Cerise. Yes, this is a. I hope this is not just a check mark to say, hey, look, we got this disabled character in there, and I hope they do something good with the character and make it meaningful. Because let's be honest, there's not a lot of disabled heroes out there, at all. So therefore, the disabled people are not being represented in games much as quite well in any other media. So, if they do this right, this is good on them. But hopefully they are doing this right. But we'll see because that game's not coming out until late next year anyway. Next up, footage from the canceled first-person Avengers game services. THQ dropped it before it filed bankruptcy in 2012, apparently. So THQ, aka the toy company, the toy headquarters, known for licensing many a game or games using many licenses, I should point out. But anyway, to coincide with the first Avengers film, THQ was working on a first-person co-op romp inspired by the Secret Invasion crossover event. Due to THQ's financial trouble and eventual closure, however, the game never saw the light of day, but now new footage from an early build has surfaced. Yeah, THQ shut down the developers working on the project, THQ Studios Australia and Blue Tongue Entertainment, back in 2011, a year after they acquired the rights to the Avengers. Shortly after the THQ fire sale began, leading to Ubisoft picking up the license and developing the console-exclusive Marvel's Avengers: A Battle for Earth, which ditched the first-person perspective. So the early build was found on a hard drive acquired by obscure gamers. The video game preservation community with Andrew Borgman, digital games curator at the Museum of Play, uploading the footage this week. It features the classic team up of Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, and Thor beating the crap out of pesky shifting scrolls. So, and that yeah, a little slip of the tongue there. My apologies. But yeah, there's footage out there in the video in the link to this article if you are so inclined to check that out. I haven't looked at it yet, so yeah. Next up,
so Empire #1 is not going to hit the stands until July 15th, but Marvel has announced they're priming the pump with a special Empire Previews magazine to debut July 1 as a free item for comic book stores. But the magazine was finalized before COVID-19 led distribution shutdown delays, and that delayed everything, including Empire, leading some of the information to be outdated, according to Marvel editor-in-chief C.B. Cebulski. Okay.
Yeah, so that I was looking on Marvel Unlimited, and that issue is out there actually. If it is the same one I'm thinking of, and I think it is. So all it is basically it's like it basically looks like a solicitation book. So, and it's got all that pertinent information with all the books that are coming.
I have that, so I'm not sure if it's the same. I know of what you speak.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm not sure if it's the same one either. But that's the one that just came out recently. So, but if this, because I think this is the same one we talked about last week, and I don't know. But regardless, hey, that book's out there if it's not the same one. Regardless, next up, Venom artist Ryan Stegman draws an adorable baby Yoda, and as you can see from the video, if you're watching it, you can see the tweet that Stegman did with baby Yoda holding looks like a cup of coffee, with the caption "Baby Yoda" drawn on tonight's kids YouTube stream. You can check it out when it's done uploading at youtube.com/StegmanR. So, there you go. You can go check that out. That's cool. It's a little rough looking sketch, but it's alright. It's alright. I know some folks are not fans of Stegman's work in certain venue. We don't necessarily have to go into that, but you know. Oh, you're muted, I think.
Sorry about that. He's not terrible. He's had, his ups and downs. Yeah. There's definitely been some, really sketchy work that he's done. He did do Oh, it's blinking in and out again. Look at that. Oh, we're having camera issues again this week. Just let's see if it fixes itself. It looks like it's fixing itself right now.
Yep, it is.
So, in any event, writer-actor Kevin Grevue spoke to Marvel.com regarding New Warriors and creating Blue Marvel. So you can get the inside scoop on a creative legacy unlike any other in this article. Bear in mind that Kevin Grevue has done lots of acting. He's appeared in live-action films like Congo and Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, and has done numerous animated supervillains, including Terrax and Super Skrull. In this piece, they discuss some of the things that he's created, such as Adam the Blue Marvel. And that is interesting because there is rumor that this character may find himself in the Marvel Cinematic Universe sooner rather than later. And I'll tell you that it was an interesting time getting my hands on copies of those books when they were first coming out, because they were very under-ordered.
Yeah, and actually, I would
much
say,
so.
Yeah, I would say, and I believe it is out there on Marvel Universe, Marvel Unlimited. If you so pleasure
It is.
to check that out, but because I believe that's where I read it. And it's actually not a bad little miniseries. So I think it's like 5 issues, and I think that's the first time I've seen his. Well, let me phrase that. I had read something else of his and didn't gone followed back to this. Didn't realize it was him writing it. Uh, so and yeah, but yeah, it's not bad. You can check him out. Check it out if you are so inclined, and check out this article by the way. So it's actually kind of interesting. Next up, 15 black comic artists whose work you need to read. The North American comic book industry desperately needs to diversify. That's a very gross understatement, especially on the creative level. Um, while there are black and non-white people of color working on mainstream titles as well as award-winning indie books, the industry is still overwhelmingly white. That said, black comic artists are putting out incredible work worthy of reader and industry support, who have, long could have been using support before now. Anyway, before are several black comic book artists whose work both longtime and burgeoning comic book readers alike should check out and recommend to others, along with links to websites and online portfolios. CBR will also feature black writers and black creator-owned books in the coming days. I would go ahead and just say some of this list. It starts off with shout out to hometown guy and former guest of the show, Sanford Green. Dennis Cowens, Valentine Delandro, who's on Pretty Deadly, or Bitch Planet, not Pretty Deadly, sorry. Kari Randolph, who's I still need to finish reading Excellence. And a bunch of others. I won't go for the Brian Stelfreeze, who's on Black Panther as a recent and other stuff. But yeah, you can go check that out. And the other folks that are on this list, there are some notable names on this outside of the ones that's been said, and a couple, as I think there was actually a joke on Twitter between like Kara Randolph and Renard Fawkes about Renard being underrated, even when this was coming out. He was joking, but he was just like, yeah, I knew it, but whatever. But yeah, so go check out the list, go check out their stuff, and we will move on to.
All right, next up, Twitter users are pressing Disney to sue police for co-opting the Punisher's iconic skull, and I agree. Comic book writers and artists have joined with Twitter users pressing Disney to sue police forces who have co-opted the Punisher's iconic skull logo after Disney pledged to support the NAACP and various other organizations fighting racism. Comic writer Matt D. Wilson took to Twitter demanding the company commit even more money to the cause. He then raised the idea of the company forcing police to stop using the Punisher's logo, a trend that co-creator Jerry Conway decried last year and actually popped up, I believe, in a Matt Rosenberg Punisher book as well. I wanted to add that it was unfortunate that this skull, which I always thought was cool, popped up in the military. And it initially popped up in the military as a symbol for, obviously soldiers and for especially elite, elite groups such as SEALs and or Rangers and and et cetera, et cetera. But unfortunately, that's, while not acceptable, I can see their point of view. But vigilantism is vigilantism. The Punisher is no superhero, and that symbol should not be attached to anything related to, serving and protecting in law enforcement. So that's my soapbox rant.
No, I mean, there you go, and I totally agree with that. And yeah, because the number of police folks that was using that as of the last couple of years that's just like that's not something you should be doing, especially when, as Agent 7 said, you're here to serve and protect, and not do the bullshit you're doing now. Next up, Spider-Man joins New York protesters on Manhattan Bridge in viral video. A man in Spider-Man costume joined the Black Lives Matter protests in New York on Tuesday night as demonstrators took to the Manhattan Bridge. And I understand there was uh, there were some things that went on after that, or as that protest went on also. But anyway, Anya Vols, a protester at the bridge who shared the clip for Spider-Man on Twitter, said, "A huge development at the Manhattan Bridge protest right now." And you see, if you're watching the video, you can see the Twitter post, which links to the video of a man in a Spider-Man costume leaning up against a wall on the bridge, on the bridge rather. And apparently, the video has been seen like 2.4 million times as of this writing. Yeah.
Honestly, I wish it wasn't the Tobey Maguire costume. It had the raised webbing, and I was just disappointed to see that. Although I did laugh. There's a part in the story that reads, somebody in the crowd quotes the 2002 Spider-Man movie by shouting, "You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us." While another asks Spider-Man from, I believe this is from Homecoming, to do a flip. So
Oh yeah.
it's pretty funny.
Yeah. And the Spider-Man has been identified. I'm not sure what should give us his name, but but he goes by Spider Sing. So,
Okay.
and he also attended the New York protest early in the week. And you can also see another picture of him in Spider-Man. Actually, wait, this is the Tobey Maguire. I mean, this is the Amazing Spider-Man. This is Garfield's costume, isn't it?
Well, I always recognize the raised webbing as the Sony, as the Sony picture, so it could be either one.
Yeah, but I mean, he might have been wearing two different ones at two different times, so I don't know. Either way, next up.
Philadelphia protester takes to the street dressed as Batman. I saw this as well. An individual dressed as Batman was seen at a protest in Philadelphia on this past Saturday.
Yeah, that's what it is. And again, here's another hero. Apparently, Heroic Hollywood has the Twitter post and a link to him, and with the caption, of course, "He's the hero we deserve, but not the one we need right now." So, yeah. Next up, Marvel and DC Warner Brothers express support for the Black community. Marvel Comics and DC, as well as DC's sister company, Warner Brothers, have expressed solidarity with the Black community following protests across the United States over the death of George Floyd. We stand against racism. We stand for inclusion. Marvel tweeted Sunday, which we alluded to. We basically said what they said earlier with Marvel Studios because it's the same. It is the same message. DC tweeted a relevant passage from 2001's Action Comics 775. Dreams save us, dreams lift us and transform us. And on my soul, I swear, until my dream of a world where dignity, honor, and justice becomes the reality we all share, I'll never stop fighting, ever. And subsequently, DC retweeted Warner Brothers' more direct statement, which began with a quote from Brian Stevenson, the founder and executive director of Equal Justice Initiative. Somebody has to stand where others are sitting. Somebody has to speak when others are quiet. Brian Stevenson, Warner Brothers read. So there you go. It goes on a little bit more, but it goes into the message that we stand with Black Lives Matter, basically. So actually, what he says is we stand with our Black colleagues, talent, storytellers, and fans, and all affected by senseless violence. Okay. Warner Brothers tweet continues: your voices matter, your message matters. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. So there you go on that. And next up,
DC has canceled the planned Manhunters: The Lost History limited series. The publisher has not announced any plans to resolicit or publish the series on other platforms. The creative team for the 5-issue series was writer Mark Andreyko and artist Renato Guedes.
Yep. Next up, I believe. Wait, wasn't there a Kate Spencer Yeah, there was a Kate Spencer, a Manhunter. I don't know whether that was a different done. So we'll get into why I did not show the articles on those particular ones. Anyway, DC Comics cancels print finales of Ruby, RWBY, Jin, and Jinlock. So the respective finales of DC Comics' Rooster Teeth-based digital-first titles, Ruby and Jinlock, will not be arriving in print. Per Newsarama, aka DC Comics has canceled the print releases of Ruby 7 and Jinlock 7, which had previously been delayed indefinitely as a result of the ongoing global health crisis. Originally, DC would publish digital chapters of both titles on a bi-weekly basis, with each 2 chapters then being collected into a monthly print issue, i.e. 14 total chapters across 7 issues for both books. So while the contents of issues 7 for both of those books are already available for purchase digitally and have been for some time, physical editions of these issues would not be available in comic shops. So, yikes. Next up.
Despite DC Comics ending its hiatus and restarting comic book distribution, there still seems to be some setbacks. According to the newly bought out Newsarama, the publishing company has canceled 22 releases for reprinted comics, including 18 books from the Dollar Comics line and 4 from the Facsimile line. It is suspected that this may be due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, forcing changes to DC's distribution schedule, but the publisher gave no official reason.
Yeah. Crap. Beast Boy Loves Raven. Let me switch this over here. There we go. Beast Boy Loves Raven in upcoming Teen Titans OGN from Garcia and Piccolo. I believe we've talked about this before. But the 3rd volume in writer Comic Garcia and artist Gabriel Piccolo's young adult Teen Titans OGN, that's original graphic novel series, will be Beast Boy Loves Raven. DC book trade distributor Penguin Random House has listed the title on their international sales website with a February 23rd, 2021 release date. And then there is a description of the book that follows from that. Next up.
Alrighty, next up, 5 titles from DC Comics' 100-page Giant line are some of the latest from the Burbank-based publisher to forego print publication and be made into digital exclusives. Again, per the newly bought out Newsarama, the print editions of Titans Giant number 2, The Flash Giant number 5, Swamp Thing Giant number 5. They've done 5 Swamp Thing Giants. Teen Titans Go, DC Superhero Girls Giant number 1, and Wonder Woman 84 Giant number 1 have all been canceled. DC plans to release the non-reprint content from these issues digitally at a later time, though no specific release date for the digital comics is currently available.
Alrighty. DC just introduced a new kind of Flashpoint, apparently. This is spoilers for The Flash Fastest Man Alive number 5, which I'm assuming is out. In the DC Universe, Flashpoint is a loaded word. Usually it's in reference to Flashpoint, the 2011 Geoff Johns and Andy Kubert DC crossover that saw the Flash create an alternate timeline by changing history to save his mother from being killed by the Reverse Flash. That storyline has been adapted in the Arrowverse and in DC animated film Justice League Flashpoint Paradox, which is actually not bad. However, Flash, the Fastest Man Alive, number 5, brings another kind of Flashpoint into its self-contained version of the DC Universe. In this digital-first series, Barry Allen introduces the idea of Flashpoints as being specific eras in history that serve as natural exits from the timeline. Over the past few issues, the series has chronicled the first encounter between this Flash and Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne. After traveling to Thawne's future last issue, this issue sees the Reverse Flash chase Barry Allen across time and space. So yeah, you can go check that out because it's more likely it's probably out there. Next up, mute it.
Sorry about that. Dark Horse Comics will release a graphic novel tied to the Panda Moni, goodness, really? Panda Moni toy brand property Alter Nation in October. Alter Nation, They Hide Hybrids is by Tim Seeley and Mike Norton, with colors by Alan Pasalacqua and lettered by Crank. The story follows GK Delta, a top secret team of cryptid heroes who protect humanity from extraordinary threats. It also includes the 12-page prequel comic Alter Nation, The Mystery of the Whining Winnie. Okay. The toy line, with a series of short webisodes to provide narrative, consists of 8 character figures. The Dark Horse graphic novel takes place immediately after the webisode series. Alter Nation, They Hide Hybrids will be 50 pages for $14.99. Now, there is a flashback, something released to promote toy sales.
I know, right? I was
And you
watching
know what we have to say to that? There you go.
Indeed. Yeah, there was something else I was watching like this morning that was kind of talking about that stuff, but it was talking about movie sides of it, which I won't get into. Next up is comic news site Newsarama to become part of Games Radar. And yes, folks, this is what we've been hinting around for the last a few a few articles that we were going over tonight. In a post late Friday, I guess this was as of 3 days ago, on the 1st. 4 days ago, I guess. Whatever. Newsarama editor-in-chief Michael Doran revealed that the long-running comic book news site will become part of Games Radar Plus, a sister site covering video games. Both are owned by Future US, a media company that owns dozens of brands and publishes 80 magazines and 568 plus bookazines a year, amongst many other activities. And then Doran explains the move in a lengthy letter, to which I would not get into. But yes, they've been folded into Games Radar, so now their stuff comes on the radar, which means some links have been broken for us for the time being, and some mysteriously are not. Or at least as of me pulling the articles for the stuff, which also means that there will be looks like there will be using Game Radar Plus's content thing behind the scenes, and probably most notably, and I'm going to hate if this is going to happen because it looks like it will, have auto playing videos on their stuff. Yeah, I hate that. I really do. Although I don't know, there's and actually I can confirm that in the article that's coming up in a little bit. But I hate that. So I had my issues with Newsarama and their sometimes lack of editing, but I do miss their concise reporting and the way their site was laid out. This is kind of sad that, but you got to do what you got to do. I understand that, but this is probably going to suck for a minute or for a while. I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, and I guess this article also says that this is pretty much the number of standalone comic sites has dropped by one. Excuse me. So yeah, and I can't even say that standalone is like that, because let's face it, CBR kind of I guess, well, Comics Beat, this is where I got this article from. They still do the things, but like a lot of sites are kind of diversifying right now, so kind of getting other stuff that's slightly outside of purview. Anyway, that's kind of how things are going nowadays. Next
up, J.K. Rowling is releasing a new book chapter by chapter online for free. She's staggering the release of her new children's novel, The Ichabog, and over the next 7 weeks, publishing the book in tiny chapters online and making it available to readers for free. She is hosting the Ichabog on a new website with anywhere from a chapter or 2 or 3 being published at a time, according to Rowling's note. The first 2 chapters are available to read now, and although there's no description of what the story entails, the Ichabog seems to have more in common with traditional fairy tales. Picture faraway kingdoms with lords and kings. So it's not exactly Harry Potter, but it is something new to try. So for all of you fans of J.K. Rowling and or Harry Potter or both, it's something interesting to check out for free.
Yeah, and it's not Harry Potter, so it's something different. See how she works with that.
Mm-hmm.
As said. Next up, Lupin the Third, where and where not to start watching the anime franchise. So yeah, this is an article that is talking about the little bit of the history of Lupin the Third. Um, the anime based off of a manga of the same name, and because apparently there's a CGI film that is coming up, and so they took it upon themselves to. If you want to get caught up on Lupin the Third and whatnot, hey, here you go. You can read this article and find out where you might want to check it out, or what you want to check out, because there is actually a lot to that series. Next up,
The Fate series, a quick guide to watching the anime. So the Fate franchise exploded onto the anime scene in the last decade after UFO tables,
yes,
adaptation of Gen Urobuchi and Takeshi Takeuchi's light novel Fate/Zero in 2011. Not long after that, the Fate anime series experienced an enormous boom that spawned many, many sequels and multiple spin offs. However, due to this very phenomenon, the Fate series has become one that is overwhelming for newcomers. So there is a guide that is published. Where is this published?
um, this is it's looking at this here on the site on CBR.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, so
yeah,
it's on CBR, so
yeah.
feel
This is
free to hop
basically
over to
his article.
CBR and take a look at that guide.
Yeah, they weren't kidding. The Fate series is kind of weird and a whole lot with it, in it. So yeah, if you're interested, you can go check that out. There's also some. I know Get in a Robot did. I think it was Get in a Robot, which is a pretty great YouTube channel, anime channel. You should definitely check out. And I know Crunchyroll's probably done something also on that series if you really want to check out where to start with that stuff. Anyway, next up and final of our news, Netflix phenom Tiger King comic book first look. You can check out the first pages from from infamous Tiger King. Tidal Wave Productions comic book biography inspired by Netflix phenomenon Tiger King is set for release on June 24th in both print and digital formats. Infamous Tiger King is a 24-page comic book written by Michael Frizzell and drawn by Joe Paradise with colors by Pablo Martinina. Right now, the world needs a distraction, reads Tidal Wave's description. Perhaps that's why we're collectively riveted to Netflix's Tiger King, a murder mystery resembling an episode of news magazine Dateline. Tiger King introduced the world to the flamboyant Joe Exotic. You know what? Y'all know what Tiger King is. I don't have to explain it. And I have still not seen it. I know a lot of people have, and I keep getting references to Carol Baskins and all this, and also the recent news that apparently that she's got the tiger farm.
Right, she's been awarded the former Joe Exotic's cat zoo, tiger zoo.
Yes,
So
and apparently
yeah,
something might have gotten forged also.
all I have to say is I definitely used some of my quarantine time to watch that, and it's just it's too much to unpack, but the memes will last forever.
Indeed. Yes, and I don't know. Like sometimes I'm like, you know what? There are certain cultural zeitgeists that I'm fine with not being a part of. This may or may not be one of them, but we'll see. Anyway, that, folks, is the end of the news for tonight. And if you're watching the video, you see where we're going to next, but I'm going to cut away because first we're going to get to an ad read.
All I was going to say is I would rather you finish your rewatch of Clone Wars and finally get to the last final season that was just released on Disney Plus rather than waste your time with Tiger.
Oh, that is exactly what I'm doing. In fact, I am in season 4 as we speak. I just got into season 4. So I am making some pretty good headway now.
All right, sounds good. So our first ad read of the night is for Wink, the personalized wine club. Wink is a world of wine delivered right to your door. From rosé to cabernet to torronté, Wink has over 100 styles of wine to discover. Ever try an orange wine? Wink connects you to a world of exclusive wines tailored to your tastes and delivered directly to your door. Wink delivers 4 bottles of wine to you every month with free shipping. You can pick your own bottles or let Wink choose and match to your taste. It doesn't cost a thing to become a member, and you can skip or cancel anytime. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy an exclusive discount of $20 off your first order. To place your first order with $20 off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us/wink. That's cspn.us/WINC. Wink Wines through CSPN. Do it today.
Oops, why did I even do that? So yes, now we get into the topic of the night, and I am so excited about this once again. Um, we are going to be talking about the 1994 Marvel Comics.
No, 1984.
1984. I'm sorry. I'm
Oh,
sorry. You're right.
We're going further back.
Yes, yes. I don't know why 94 came up, but yes, 1984. Um, um, Marvel Comics limited series, West Coast Avengers, 4-issue miniseries starring those lovable wackos, and I say lovable because I love them. And so we'll get into just a little bit of background of what's going on around this time. So this is fresh off of Secret Wars, like pretty like matter of fact, issue 243. So in episode 243 of Avengers, if I'm not mistaken, uh, I think the issue before, the group that went to Secret Wars disappeared or something like that, and then the next issue came back, something like that. I can't remember. Regardless, issue 243 is when they came back. At this time, Vision was pretty much saying that, and this was after, so there's a little bit of unpack here. Vision had been hurt a few issues prior to this and had been connected to the world computer on Titan, thanks to Star Fox, who was a member of the Avengers at this time. Star Fox of Eris, of Eros, or excuse me, Eros of Titan, rather, codenamed Star Fox. He had been connected to the world computer, whose name is Isaac, and somewhere in between there, started getting delusions of grandeur. And while the folks were off doing Secret Wars, he took over the chair of the Avengers and started hatching this plan to kind of make the Avengers a little get the Avengers out there a little bit in a broader sense. So one of the things happened to be as a matter of fact, this happened when everybody came back from Secret Wars, and the then chairman, who was Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, gave Vision the chairman's seat for whatever odd reason, which was kind of weird, but it happened. And one of his first enactments was, while he was going on his purple tour and talking to the president and doing all sorts of other things, was to establish a West Coast branch, to which he had Hawkeye and Mockingbird, who were newly married at this time, thanks to the Hawkeye miniseries from a year prior to this. Hawkeye had his first miniseries in which he met Mockingbird and married at the end of issue 4. You should go check that out. It's a pretty good miniseries. Anyway, Hawkeye, of course, went to Secret Wars, which means that Mockingbird and Sue Storm, who was pregnant at the time, Lois State was left behind, and they stayed at the Avengers Mansion, trying to help out as they can. Anyway, Secret Wars is over. They all came back. Hawkeye and Mockingbird went out west, and 243 to 246 is when they called and said, hey, we're pretty much up and running. By the way, they got help from one person, not Tony Stark, and that was Bill Foster, who helped them put the compound together. Bill Foster, folks. R.I.P. Anyway, Uh, which leads us. I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, there was also a thing with the dire race that the Avengers were dealing with, but it has nothing to do with this. So now going into, I think there might be something that I'm missing, but probably not. Oh wait, no, there is something I'm missing. Iron Man was not Tony Stark because Tony Stark was, uh, um, let's just say, well, this was after Demon in the Bottle, and this is after he's pretty much sobered up and was trying to get his stuff back together, and the loss of Stark International, if I'm not mistaken, in his new company that he started up on the West Coast. So, which means he was taking his time to do that and staying sober and not doing Iron Man shenanigans, which he gave to Jim Rhodes, Rhodey. So the Iron Man that shows up here in the miniseries is Jim Rhodes. No one knows that, or at least off the bat, no one knows that because they all think it's still Tony because most of the people in the Avengers know who Tony is at this point. But that kind of comes out short and smoothly, which we will get into. And I think that's about it going into because some of the rest of the stuff we'll find out during the course of the miniseries. Oh yeah, there's also some stuff that also from Thor that shows up, but I don't know what it is, so it doesn't really matter. But
Right. It's well, when we get there, I'll fill the blank in for that.
ha! And speaking of the blank, let us get into the West Coast Avengers #1, which actually let me I don't know if you did it on purpose or that was. But
No, I didn't do it on purpose, but I got the gist of the pun.
Yes, that was pretty good. Regardless, West Coast Avengers #1, as you can see the cover right there. You see it was 75 cents, which I thought they went down to 60. I thought it was 60, but maybe I'm wrong.
60 cents, or at least the cover that's in Marvel Unlimited is priced at 60 cents.
Yeah, so that's weird. And I think where I got this, it says 75. Now, granted, I don't know where this cover is coming from. Well, I know where I got this cover from, but I don't know, as you can.
Maybe it's a Canadian cover.
Maybe. But yeah, it was definitely Marvel Unlimited had it for 60 cents, so that's kind of weird. Regardless, you can see the cover here. You see Hawkeye. If you're watching the video, it's Hawkeye, and a cast of folks who may or may not be involved. Some of them definitely were not involved with this story. As we get into it right now. So we start off with Hawkeye and Mockingbird at Avengers. Well, first off, we start off with Hawkeye saying Avengers Assemble because that's one thing you got to do in the course of a book, and him raising his bow high, that kind of stuff. And I guess I should go ahead and say before we even get into it, this was written by Roger Stern, penciled by Bob Hall. Brett Breeder was the inker, Joe Rosen letterer, colorist was Juliana Ferreter. Mark Grunwald was the editor, and Jim Shooter was the editor-in-chief. So now to continue, Mockingbird and Hawkeye are on the stage by themselves, and they talk about, the coming together of the compound. And, there's a little bit of talk of from Mockingbird talking about, I don't know if I'm kind of cut out to be an Avenger because, I don't have the caliber of the other folks, but Hawkeye's like, nah, I'm an Avenger. I only get to shoot bow and arrows. Cap's an Avenger. He doesn't have powers. And your shield training makes you just as qualified as anybody else. So then they go and talk to Jarvis, who then puts them in contact with Vision. And then we get the footnote to Avengers 246, and they talk about, hey, I got your message, and I heard that everything's coming along over there, and we'll be sending you some candidates, from a list we got, but it's up to you to fill out the team. And then I think it cuts to San Francisco, where we see one Jessica Drew, not as Spider-Woman, but we know she is. In fact, I'm trying to remember at this point, was she in between Spider-Woman roles, or she was just a detective? I can't remember, or she might have was. But regardless, her
I mean, this goes back a long way.
yeah, I was a little hazy about that part because I know there's that character's gone through some stuff. But she's at this point a private detective, and Tiger was working with her, and they were talking about a case, and then Tiger gets a message from the Vision saying, a kind of cryptic message saying, "Hey, go out to this place," which we'll find out where she ends up in a minute. She kind of dips out from Jessica Drew, who gets worried about it because Tigra, for some strange reason, didn't tell her what was going on, and calls out to someone to help her, see what's going on with Tigra. Then we cut to a movie set where looks like a James Bond character is doing it. Come to find out, it's Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man, who is a stunt man working on his film. A stunt happens, but he's all right because he's Wonder Man and he's invulnerable, and people are still worried about him, but have no real reason to worry about him. He goes to his trailer because there's a beeping in there. He goes in there, checks it out. Come to find out, it is that same cryptic message that same message from Vision. And he flies off with his jumpsuit and jetpack, or jets, his side jets, whatever, in his jumpsuit that I kind of wish he had still right now. At this point, also, Simon is. Wonder Man is kind of still unsure about himself. He's been that way off and on forever and a day, so that's nothing real new. But we will not get to it in this miniseries, but he kind of takes a turn in his character, or one of the turns in his character during the course of the West Coast Avengers series. Anyway, then we cut to Iron Man, a.k.a. Jim Rhodes, who's flying above, I think he's Silicon Valley. And he gets the same message and is told to meet at what we will know to be Avengers Compound out in Palos Verdes, where he meets up with Tigra, who shows up from the airport, who thinks she knows who this is. But again, like I said, this is Jim Rhodes underneath the suit, and they don't know this, and he doesn't tell her this right off the bat. He helps Tigra off with a coat, to which she's like, oh my. And then Hawkeye meets him. You see a shadowy figure, which we will find out who that is in a minute. Hawkeye then explains the situation to Tigra and Iron Man, and Iron Man's kind of like, I don't know. But also Tigra's like, I don't know if I wanted to, if I'm going to join or not, because I'm not too sure about what I'm doing right now. And then Iron Man kind of reassures her. But then somebody breaks in, and these would-be Avengers end up going after them. They finally catch up to who we find out is the Shroud, thanks to Wonder Man coming and tackling him. But not without going through a couple of pages of the chase throughout the compound with Mockingbird and Hawkeye, almost catching them, but not really. And Tigra also, like, knowing who this is, kind of figures out quickly who it is and goes to find said person. Iron Man catches up to him, gives him a chase, but loses him. And this is when we get Wonder Man tackle. And they all talk about what happens because Tigra comes and keeps Wonder Man from knocking his block off. But Shroud is hurt. Because we come to find out that this is the Shroud, I guess he's a superhero. He's basically a superhero that's playing a gangster in San Francisco to kind of keep his cover. Like, I think he was doing some things around this time. I don't remember, but he comes in and off of the West Coast Avengers at times, and this is just the first one. So the Shroud basically, says what he's doing. He was the one that was sent by Jessica Drew to look for Tigra, and Tigra was like, oh yeah, it's my fault because I didn't tell Jessica what was going on. And then Hawkeye propositions the Shroud as to be a member of the Wackos, which he declines. And they're in the first issue of the book after Wonder Man's like, hey, you want to tell me what's going on here? And then Hawkeye said, all right, well, let me tell y'all over again what happened since you weren't here. And therein ends the book, this issue.
All right, so we move on to the second issue of the 4-issue limited series. The title of the story is called Blanking Out, and this is the reason for the pun that Roddykat picked up on that I inadvertently made as I was discussing basically helping the introduction to our topic for this week. So this issue, again, I believe is roughly the same creative team. It's Roger Stern on scripts, Bob Hall on pencils, Brett Breeding on inks, Diana Albers on letters, Juliana Ferreter on colors, and Mark Grunwald is the editor, and Jim Shooter is the editor in chief. We open the second issue of this 4-issue limited series with a training session in which Jim Rhodes Iron Man is basically playing the bad guy, and Hawkeye, Mockingbird, and Tigra are depicted as trying to take him out and using various team-based tactics to do their best to take him out. They eventually bring down Iron Man out of the sky, but Iron Man quickly turns the tables on the 3 new West Coast Avengers, and they basically break up this little training session by saying, we're just going to keep on working on our tactics. We transition to, well, just before we transition to the next scene, both Tigra and Iron Man have little inner monologues about what they're going through in terms of their personal conflicts, and considering whether or not they really want to stay with the West Coast Avengers moving forward. We transition to Simon Williams moving out of his kind of cheap apartment, because that's what's implied. It's a prefab house, so he basically lifts up one wall of the house and takes it off the frame of the building so that he can get all of his gear out and puts it back with his super strength. He is chatting with one of his Hollywood friends when he's discussing this. So as he packs up his crate to be brought back to the Avengers West Coast compound, the 2 of them, Wonder Man, Simon Williams, and this Hollywood friend, are going to, I guess, the bank, and they happen to be there just when a bank robbery occurs, and the bank robber is someone, and I love the old school effect. I believe this is Zipatone inking. It's a material that basically has a dot matrix look to it, and an artist basically would just cut it with a razor or an X-Acto knife. That's the name brand I was thinking of, and they would lay it over the outline that they wanted to create this effect in. So I believe this is Zipatone that they used to create the effect for the bank robber, who is able to deflect bullets from one of the bank guards and allow himself to escape Wonder Man's clutches, despite Wonder Man having a point blank shot with his 90+ ton strength rating right into this bank robber, and he's able to survive it and basically slither or wriggle away from Wonder Man. He gets away, and we transition to a scene in which the bank robber is gloating, and we get a little bit of backstory on the bank robber, who basically happens upon a disgruntled Stark Enterprises employee, and we have there's a little bit of background in which we talk about where this disgruntled employee talks about the change in ownership between Stark Enterprises and Stain International, I believe it was called, and this disgruntled employee Instead of being patient and waiting for a bus, decides to walk out into the middle of the street and gets himself run over by a car. He happens to be carrying some highly powerful technology, which provides the wearer with a personal force field. And this personal force field is what gives this anonymous person the ability to perform this particular robbery with the effect of having a force field that masks his identity and gives him a personal force field that coats his entire surface of his the entire surface of his body. But what's teased is that there is an entity that is connected to this power source at the very end of this recap. We transition to the West Coast Avengers in their compound talking about what just happened to Simon Williams, who is not very happy about having let a bank robber get the best of him. This is someone who can trade punches with Thor and the Hulk, and he's not very pleased with his performance. So the rest of the team decides to chip in when it seems that Wonder Man is dead set on going out on his own, but the rest of the team does convince him to participate in, participate with some teamwork. So each Wacko decides to take up a search for this character who proves to not be very hard to find. The Blank, as he's been dubbed, decides to do another robbery. In this case, it is not of a bank, but of an armored car that is doing its pickups from various businesses. In this case, it is a restaurant. And Mockingbird is the first Avenger to happen upon this this particular robbery gone awry, because she is listening to the police bands while she is driving around in a custom convertible. I love it. The Blank tries to make a break for it and is cut off by Hawkeye. Iron Man jumps into the fray, and the three try to do a pincer move on the Blank. The Blank decides to knock over some gas pumps, and the resulting sparks from him knocking over the gas pumps produce a large explosion that covers his escape, forcing Iron Man, Hawkeye, and Mockingbird to go into civilian and property saving mode. Iron Man essentially finds a dump truck with sand in it to smother the fire. Wonder Man and Tigra get there too late, and the frustration of the Avengers continues. We cut to the Blank basically realizing that he is in over his head. He's looking to maybe make a quiet break for it, and looks to charge up his device, his personal force field, one more time. And the tease that I mentioned earlier about an entity being part of this power source, or at least being connected to this power source, takes center stage when a character we have not seen in some time decides to appear, and it turns out to be, drum roll please, Graviton. And it's Graviton who I guess maybe wasn't connected to this particular source of power, but this will be described further in the next issue that Roddykat will cover. But at the end of the day, Graviton learns what he's missed, and he finds out that the Blank is being pursued by the Avengers. And Graviton says, I think I can help you. You don't have to worry about the Avengers again, and introduces himself to the Blank.
Yep.
And that ends our second issue.
Which leads us into issue 3 of the 4-issue limited series of West Coast Avengers. The title of this one is called "Taking Care of Business." You feel free to sing it if you want to.
Take
Same.
care of business
Exactly.
every day.
Pretty much the same creative staff with the exception of the letterer. So it's Roger Stern writing, Bob Hall, Brett Breeder, which you might as well go ahead and say, they are pretty much going to be the ones on all of these. The letterer is probably going to change, and everybody else. Rick Parker is the letterer on this one, but everyone else that has been attached to these issues are the same. So, getting into it, we get into it there. The West Coast Avengers are seen trying to clean up from a snowstorm. So, if you think it never rains in Southern California, well, snow is also another issue that doesn't normally happen, but it's going on. But apparently, that is something that was going on in the pages of the Mighty Thor at the time. So, I don't know if Agent 70 knows.
You're right, Jack. This is the blank I was going to fill in earlier. Ha ha ha! I said blank. Essentially, this is related to the story in Thor, wherein Malekith hatched a plot to crack open the casket of ancient winters, and it was the casket that loosed upon the earth the ancient winters and produced winter, like super freezing and basically winter-like effects across the entire globe. So it's cool to see some continuity being maintained in the pages of this book.
Indeed, and and there's shadows of it, because there's been some allusions to Secret Wars also, which was actually going on, which was basically, if I'm not mistaken, going on at the time, but we already saw them kind of come and go from it. It's just that the monthly issues of were still kind of playing out at this one, if I'm not mistaken. So, anywho, so there's that. You see Wonder Man and Iron Man trying to clean up the highway, and they're talking. Wonder Man's still kind of bummed about the blank getting away, and that was apparently weeks prior. So, which actually I will go ahead and say this right now because this is kind of a thing that's with Wonder Man and the team at large, because at this point they're all kind of feel like they are not good enough to be Avengers, and they feel like they have something to prove. And Hawkeye's always felt like that, so that kind of goes without saying. But regardless, so Wonder Man's still kind of bummed about the blank getting away, and as they're cleaning this up, so Iron Man's kind of having some inner, Jim Roach kind of having some inner monologue with himself about the weather and Wonder Man and things like that. But then we cut to a robbery because the snow brings out the folks trying to rob places, which Mockingbird kind of comes in and stops along with Hawkeye on a Sky Cycle, which, by the way, that Sky Cycle came out of that miniseries also. So if you wonder where that Sky Cycle came from, that you see him in probably the animated versions of Avengers, that's pretty much where it came in. But yeah, they stop the robbers, but also Tigra comes in and helps get the remaining robbers who tried to get away in their station wagon, gets them away, and kind of holds them until the police comes. They all meet at the Hollywood sign, where Wonder Woman. Oh, it's gonna be Wonder Woman. I'm gonna do that a couple of times, so forgive me for that. Wonder Man joins up with the group, and they're like, "Hey, you know what? The weather at this point pretty much ended. So I guess whatever happened in Thor finished happening, and weather came back to normal. So Hawkeye and the crew are talking, and I was like, you know what? We did some good work while whatever that freak of weather was that they don't know anything about as of yet. So let's have a barbecue, the first annual barbecue, which actually reminds me of their baseball games that they end up having in annuals and such, which those are also great reads, by the way. The East Coast versus West Coast baseball games end up being some good issues. Anyway, so yeah, there's a barbecue tonight, and Wonder Man's like, yeah, sure, I'll be there, but he's still bummed, so he just kind of flies off. Hawkeye goes to pick up some steaks. Tigra kind of makes up an excuse so that she can talk to Iron Man, who she thinks is Tony Stark. because she's worried about Wonder Man. So she's like, "Hey Tony, could you talk to him since you've known him the longest?" And this is when Jim Rhodes reveals himself to not be Tony Stark. Not necessarily Jim reveals who he is, but he pretty much takes off one of the gauntlets and shows his hand, which is not white. And Tiger's like, "Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't know." But then Rhodey's like, "Hey, I'll talk to him if you want to, but he'd much rather. I'm sure it'll come better for somebody who looks way better than him." Talking about her. And of course, if you don't know Tiger, she's pretty much a cat lady in a bikini. So, yeah, take that from what it was. Then we cut to Graviton, who basically says that, yeah, he took over somebody's place while all the strange weather is going on, and then we get a flashback to, I guess it was like Thor 324, where he was dispatched by Thor and put into suspended animation, and then coincidentally, the coming of the Beyonder during Secret Wars or prior to Secret Wars wakes him up out of this suspended animation in whatever place he was in, and of course we see where last issue he gets released from where he was by way of the Blank charging his belt. So the Blank comes in, and the Blank comes in and says, "Hey, you know, I did what you asked me for. The message has been delivered. You've done the thing." And then them two talk. The Blank is like, "Look, I'm still kind of nervous. I'm not used to going up against the Avengers." Graviton's like, "Look, I will handle them. Don't you worry about them. He's going up against them before." And then the Blank's like, "Yeah, but I heard you got your butt handed to you." And then Graviton's like, "Look, I will launch you into space. Don't play with me, and I will turn off your powers in the process. So you do not want to mess with me." Blank's like, "All right, cool, I get it, but I'm just a dude, you know, with the things. So I'm along with you for the ride, but without my shield, I'm nothing." So, and then Graviton says he vows to get even with the Avengers because he's got something to prove also. So that is kind of a thing that's kind of going on through this whole thing. Tiger catches up with Wonder Man, who's on the beach, and then they talk about, you know, their various issues, personal issues about, you know, not belonging to the team, you know, with the team, because we go through Wonder Man's backstory just a little bit briefly about his death and return and being back with the Avengers, and that one issue of the Avengers where they're on David Letterman's show, which that's an interesting one. And then Tiger decides to, and then he goes up into his, coming into his stuntman position with the movies, and he's quite comfortable and likes that. But so he's like, "Yeah, I got that, but also I still want to do this Avengers thing right and kind of be better." Again, like I said, once we find out that the Simon Williams kind of always have confidence issues, either he's overconfident or not confident enough in his abilities, and that kind of in the early part of the main series, that kind of gets to be an issue. But then, like I said, Tigra talks about her issues about coming back to the Avengers and whatnot, and she also reveals herself, or her human form, of Greer Garson Nelson, which folks will probably know that if they know and love Tigra. She also explains that where she got their pendant on her bikini that lets her transform back and forth from human to Catwoman. No relation to DC's Catwoman, but she basically says, and I don't know if this part held up, but apparently the pendant allows her to. It's like a hologram of her becoming human. So she's still her underneath it, but she becomes, which is, I think, gets explained totally different, or it gets explained away like later in later issues, because she's actually turning human and it's not just a facade. But again, that gets explained in the main West Coast Avengers ongoing series. And like I said, we get a little bit of her backstory and a promise to come back to it at some point in time. And I believe that came out of Marvel Chiller, her backstory, or something. I can't remember. I think Marvel Chiller was when she first came up, and I think there was something else that probably did a little bit more expanding on what she was talking about here.
There's a footnote in one of these issues. I too remember seeing it.
Yeah,
There's
and
a
this one
you know,
says, yeah, and this one says reminds us to tell you about it sometime. And I think that might be alluding to what happens in the main West Coast Avengers series coming up, because that happens like issue like 5 or 6 is when they start going to the cat people stuff.
okay.
Yeah, so they might be talking about that and not necessarily the origin, because the origin is out there and they would have alluded to it by now, but by this point. Anyway, so they continue to talk. Tiger kind of makes kind of makes Wonder Man feel a little bit better. They kind of pick up themselves about how they handled each other in the snow thing. But then there's like, hey, Wonder Man is still kind of bummed about the blank getting away. So Tiger's like, all right, fine, we're gonna go see somebody and see if we can do something about this, because you're not gonna give this up. Apparently, they go into this jazz club called the Cats Jazz Club, where the Shroud, I forgot to mention in issue 1, said, hey, if you ever need me, you can come here and I'll help you out. So Tiger and Wonder Man go there. The place has been ramshackled. Some folks got beat up, and the folks in there are like, "Hey, we're not trying to talk to you." But then the Shroud shows up, and that's what's going on there. And then the people that's in there was like, "Yeah, some hired muscle kind of came and bust up the joint." And Tiger's like, well, we should call the police. Shroud's like, no, because then my cover would be blown with the other gangs and I'd look weak, so we don't want to do that. And Wonder Man's like, hey, at least let us help you out, because I busted up your ribs back a while back. But and the Shroud again says, hey, don't worry about it, because again, I got to stand in with the gangs to worry about. But what you could do is kind of help me out into this thing. And sure enough, and Wonder Man and the Shroud goes undercover. Or excuse me, the Wonder Man goes undercover. The Shroud goes as himself to this one thing, and Tiger's kind of running lookout, basically. To where the Shroud kind of goes in, and they find the blank. Wonder Man attacks with the blank in disguise, where he gets lifted into the air using some gravity powers, and the Shroud is weighed down a ton, so they don't know that Graviton is around. They end up getting knocked each other out thanks to an unknown source, but like I said, it's Graviton. The blank finds out that Wonder Man is Wonder Man in disguise. Tiger jumps through the window, tries to attack the blank, and then Graviton shows himself, takes out Wonder Man by making him heavy as heck, and just ramshackles the whole room and pins everybody up against the wall. Wonder Man Wonder Man actually gets enough strength to break out, or at least come back to where the Graviton is. Graviton puts a little bit more pressure on Wonder Man. I gotta stop saying that. I really do. I apologize, folks. When he throws Tiger, the blank, and the Shroud out of a window into the ocean, then we cut back to Avengers compound, where Hawkeye is slaving over a hot barbecue with Jim Rhodes Iron Man watching. And Michael Berg comes in and says, hey, we hadn't heard from Tiger and Wonder Man, so and their radios aren't working, so we might want to go check up on them. And then we cut back to the scene of the party, where Graviton is holding Wonder Man underwater at the pool, and having some fun at not having some fun, he's trying to kill him, but I mean, Wonder Man's unkillable at this point. And that's where this issue ends. In fact, it says at the end of the issue, the breathtaking conclusion. Get it? Because Wonder Man's underwater. Next issue. Indeed. Which leads us to
issue number 4, the finale of the 4-part miniseries. The creative team on this is slightly different. Roger Stern is again the writer. Bob Hall provides breakdowns, while Brett Breeding and Peter Berardi are the finishers. Joe Rosen is the letterer, and Ken Fedunowicz is the colorist.
So actually,
So
weirdly enough, on this, on I'm sorry, the cover on Marvel Unlimited also says 75 cents.
mhm.
So anyway,
But I
but
think at that time the price change took effect.
probably because I know there
It's
was some, yeah,
to
because a
me
couple of
that's
issues,
about the right time.
right? Because
Yeah.
a couple of issues earlier, it was absolutely 60 cent, and I remember I remember getting the stuff like when it actually came out, and I was like, why is it going up? What's going on here? Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I definitely remember. Um, I definitely remember the time period in which the prices did change from 60 to 75 cents. And if
Doggone
that
it,
makes us all sound old to you youngins out there, you're damn right.
Yep, because I
So
remember at the time it was like, "Damn you, Secret Wars," but I don't think it was Secret Wars' issue. I mean, yeah, Secret Wars' problem. But
right,
anyway,
to be honest, I think back on it now and I think about what we spend um, weekly on books. It's just ridiculous,
hmm,
absolutely ridiculous. For the love of the game, right?
yep, yep.
So. But in any event, getting back to this issue, um, feel free to chime in because this is the last issue.
Hmm.
Um, we open with Tigra surfacing for air with the shroud in tow. She somewhere keeps her emergency Avengers beacon on that bikini,
Yeah,
and she
somewhere.
activates it while giving us a quick recap of the events of last issue, in which the three of the two Avengers and the guest star Shroud, got their butts handed to them by Graviton, and that's nothing to be ashamed about. Graviton, despite being kind of a corny villain, has some has a pretty intense power set that, if used correctly, can really make him a force to be reckoned with. Uh, so as Tigra is wondering whether or not they're going to be saved in time, Iron Man, Jim Rhodes, descends on their scene in response to the emergency beacon and brings them to the Avengers compound, where Tigra is able to relay what happened and that Wonder Man is being held captive by Graviton. So we get to the big reveal of this issue, which is, drum roll please, in conversation regarding, in conference regarding their plan to approach Graviton. It basically comes out that Jim Rowe, it basically comes out that Iron Man isn't familiar with Avengers history as as Hawkeye expects him to be, because obviously Hawkeye thinks that it's if not Tony Stark, at least Iron Man underneath, the previous person he thought was Iron Man underneath the armor. But it turns out that this is the time for Rhodey to reveal himself to the Avengers West Coast division, and it even comes out when um, it even gets revealed that they actually had already worked together during the Beyonders Secret War.
Hmm.
So once that comes out, Hawkeye basically flashes back to uh, his own responses to possibly being not ready or not fit or not or just being kind of hot-headed when it comes to his interactions with Captain America when he was still a new Avenger. So it's an interesting way to have the two characters relate to each other.
Well, so back up real quick, because basically the way Hawkeye said it was well, and granted, this is not out of the pocket for Hawkeye, because he usually puts his foot in his mouth. At least at this time, a whole lot. Yeah. So before that actually happens, when Rhodey reveals himself, he basically says that yeah, he became Iron Man um when Tony Stark was incapacitated, aka Demon in a Bottle. You know, you should go check that out because it's a really good read. Iron Man 170, as it says here in the footnote, and this is when Hawkeye was like, "You mean to tell me I've been working all this time with an amateur Iron Man?" And and to which Rhodey's like, "Look, I know I'm still kind of a rookie, but I was like, yeah, I helped y'all out a great deal when the aforementioned Secret Wars." So and that's when this is when Hawkeye and relates to Rhodey with this, and then they get to going on the avenging.
Right. So getting back to the story, um, basically, Hawkeye apologizes for calling him an amateur, but we move on to their battle plan, and Mockingbird's shield agent training proves to be very helpful when she is able to get her hands on, or at least pull up the files on uh, the maps of the. I guess it's another. I guess it's an estate. Yeah, it's an estate in Santa Monica that Graviton has basically taken over. So she's able to get Landsat maps. You know, talk about Google Earth being very much in the future still. So um, we flash to the Santa Monica retreat that Graviton has taken over from. I guess uh, what we didn't describe is that Graviton has basically taken over. I don't know if this was in a previous issue that Graviton basically took over a crime syndicate.
Yes.
You know, like a crime family.
Yeah, that's basically
So-
what he was alluding to when he said, yeah, I think when I was talking about it, I kind of glossed over it a little bit, but yeah, he took over this crime syndicate in his house, like on the low, while the Avengers was taking
Right.
care of the snowstorm stuff.
Right. So essentially, Graviton and the Blank have created a base of operations for themselves, and as crime families and crime syndicates are wont to do, they are throwing a party. You know, there's plenty of men there trying to get some with very pretty ladies, and we have even pretty bartenders, and that is going to come back later. So there is a party crasher here looking to speak to the latest player on the organized crime scene, that being who is this guy? How did they announce him? Uh, well, some dude with a gun, and Madame Mask, a known member of the Magia, aka the Mafia in the Marvel Universe, a known member of the Magia, and that brings instant credibility to her and gets her an audience with Graviton. Graviton is obviously very impressed with Madame Mask. She is of some renown, and he knows that she is a regular foe of Iron Man. Graviton shows off by showing where he has imprisoned Wonder Man underneath a pool, thinking that he can actually kill Wonder Man by drowning him, by pinning him to the bottom of a pool. And I'm thinking, well, you don't exactly know this guy, Graviton, but that's another story. Uh, Madame Mask basically, oh, it calls him Louis or Lewis. So the gentleman that came in with Madame Mask has a look of shock and horror on his face when he sees Wonder Man pinned underneath the pool. Madame Mask slaps him, smacks the taste out of his mouth, and smacks some sense into him. And as the two villains are talking about this, lo and behold, they are assaulted by some kind of errant shooting. Like, why is he shooting the pool, right? But basically, we have an all-out frontal assault by Iron Man Jim Rhodes. Graviton is able to put up a gravitic force field around himself and Madame Mask to protect from the repulsor rays. Louis, Madame Mask's valet slash bodyguard, gets shot away from the scene, and Iron Man is basically taking on all of these wannabe gangsters, by deflecting all their bullets. But Graviton decides to use Iron Man as a ping pong ball and and knocks him against several surfaces. Meanwhile, Wonder Man at the bottom of the pool is able to finally lift a finger now that Graviton is being distracted in battle. Remember the bartender I referred to earlier? She is Mockingbird in disguise, and she has played a role in the story that will become evident sooner rather than later. So Hawkeye she radios Hawkeye and says they're going to put phase 2 into motion or into operation. Iron Man is getting the stuffing smashed out of him, but he's up for another round with Graviton. Wonder Man is slowly getting over the gravitic pressure that Graviton is placing upon him as Iron Man is putting more and more force on Graviton. Mockingbird joins the fray, as does Hawkeye. That gives Graviton more stuff to deal with, and Wonder Man is shown to be getting more advantage against the gravity that's being placed on him. We find out that the man that had come in with Madame Mask was in fact Hawkeye, because apparently that was a dummy Hawkeye that came in on the Sky Cycle and got knocked over. So that was a pretty funny thing. I like the art that depicted that it was a Hawkeye dummy, like there was like stitching across where the mouth and the nose would be. So that was pretty amusing to see. So as a result of all of the distractions placed on Graviton, Wonder Man is able to exert sufficient strength or force against it, and he's able against the gravity, and he's able to get out of the pool and knock Graviton on his tuchus. We get Iron Man swooping in to pick up Madame Mask. Obviously, that is one of his arch nemesis. Graviton yells out, "Come back with her!" I love it. It's so corny, but we get a caption and a thought bubble. I love thought bubbles. This brought me back. We get a thought bubble from Graviton that says, "My head feels numb, but the rush of air seems to help. I must rescue Madame Mask." This will come up very shortly. So, Madame Mask is heard screaming. By Graviton hears her screaming, and he lands just as someone else calls out, "Behind you." We find Jim Rhodes hooked up to a local power substation, which feeds the entire southwestern power grid with electricity. And this is a callback to a move from Secret Wars that Rhodey and Hawkeye referenced in the issue prior.
Yep.
Where
No, actually, it was earlier this issue.
Oh, was it earlier this issue? I apologize.
I think so. Yeah.
I think you're right. But what they're referring to is a scene in Secret Wars #4, after Molecule Man had dumped an entire mountain range upon the heroes, and the Hulk and some other strong characters had shoved out a small space to keep themselves from getting crushed. Reed Richards basically doctored up some energy relays using several pieces of technology, including Hawkeye's trick arrows. And listen, you gotta love that I'm doing this straight from the dome. Mm-hmm. And some circuitry from Spider-Man's web shooters. Mm-hmm. That obviously plays into events later on in Secret Wars. But getting back to this little tangent,
and I believe it was powered by Captain Marvel and somebody else.
Human Torch.
Yeah,
It was the
Human
Human
Torch.
Torch.
That's right.
So the Human Torch channels his Nova Flame, and Captain Marvel is channeling all of the energy from the electromagnetic spectrum into these power relays hooked up to Iron Man's power pods.
And this is Monica
And
Rambeau, by the way. We should make that point.
yes, this is Monica Rambeau, and Iron Man basically with all of this power pumped into the Iron Man suit uses his repulsor rays to punch through the side of several mountains in a mountain range so that the heroes can emerge onto the planet's surface. Meanwhile, Thor had been smashing at the mountain because he had heard about what happened from the villains and had escaped a battle with them so that he could try to rescue his friends. And his mightiest blows were being interpreted by the heroes underneath the mountains as tapping, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Reed heard underneath when he said, shoot that way towards the tapping. So you got to love it, man. Pull it right off the dome.
That's pretty good.
On panel for panel.
You did say that the Hulk. You did say that the Hulk was keeping up the mountain.
Oh yes, I was about to say I did leave that out because I presume that everyone knows this is what's going on, and the Hulk is holding up the mountain because that's what's on the cover.
Yeah, and not only that, just as a quick side, because like Hulk was Banner was in charge of the Hulk, so it wasn't like dumb Hulk. So, but during this time of Secret War, he was kind of slowly getting dumber, I guess, or that's the case would be. So basically,
it was kind of going back and forth. Yeah, it was kind of going back and forth.
And it was like, well, so they were like, and so the Hulk was holding up this big mountain range, and wasn't sure if he could hold it. But so I think Hawkeye or somebody got the idea to kind of make him upset, or was it Spider-Man or Hawkeye? I can't remember who.
No, it was Richards. It was Reed.
You sure?
It was Reed. Yeah, positive. Reed was being a jerk. I mean, we all know that Reed is easily one of the biggest jerks in the Marvel universe, but he was definitely being snippy just to keep the Hulk madder, or getting mad so that if he wouldn't lose his strength and just keep getting stronger.
Exactly. So that's when this whole other plan got enacted, and and I think, as a matter of fact, even when they got offered, it was like Hulk was like, yeah, "Look, I know what you were doing, Reed, or whoever, yeah." Like, I know what you were doing, but try that again. You're gonna catch these hands.
So anyway, back to
Coast
West Coast Avengers. This is definitely almost a direct reference to that particular issue and the events happening on the Beyonders battle world, because Iron Man is hooked up to a whole lot of power, and Graviton's like, all right, I'll take you up on that challenge. Iron Man basically zaps Graviton and basically overloads himself and overloads the relays. While Graviton is down and Iron Man is down, Iron Man is waiting for his systems to reboot. While Graviton is down, he's a little bruised and shaken, but otherwise he's fine. Madame Mask comes on the scene and knocks and hits Graviton with the right cross. She tears off her mask and reveals herself to be Tigra.
In her human form.
I'm sorry, yes. So this whole time, Madame Mask was Tigra masquerading. So as Graviton puts up a field to keep Tigra away, and I think this has been revealed over the last several pages. It turns out Mockingbird, as the bartender at Graviton's party, had been slipping him drugs mixed in with his drinks to help hinder his thinking and concentration. And that is alluded to in several panels where they're surprised that he is as strong as he is, given the fact that Mockingbird had basically slipped him a whole bunch of Mickeys the entire night.
Which I'm going to interject here and say that this is slightly ironic given what happens in the pages of the West Coast Avengers ongoing later on down the line. Because Mockingbird herself gets, let's say, roofied and kidnapped and taken away and assaulted by the Phantom Stranger, which ends up causing an issue between her and Hawkeye, which
Oh, it's not the Phantom Stranger. It's the Phantom Rider, isn't it?
Phantom Rider. Excuse me. You're right.
Yeah, I was about to say
Right.
we're crossing DC Marvel.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah, it was like you're right. It's the Phantom Rider, and that has been a sticky. That is basically pretty much what led to them getting divorced much later on down in history. And it was also kind of weird, also because we're not going to get into it tonight, but that caused a whole big rift between not only them two, but between the team, and that also ended up being what caused Force Works to come about, sort of. Actually, no, not even sort of, but definitely. And it was whole weird because this was kind of one of those things I really kind of hated around this time because I'm like, there was no real reason for them to have that, to have that fight. But I know this is kind of get away from what's going on here and now. But like I said, this is just a little later history in the West Coast Avengers thing, to which we may or may not get to. I don't know. We had talked about it, but if we get around to it, we might. But
getting back to the main story,
but getting back
just
to West Coast Avengers,
just to finish this up. What were you saying?
No, go ahead. I'm going to go for it.
Okay. Yeah, just to finish up the main story, Iron Man and Wonder Man continue the frontal assault, and Graviton is still able to push them back. But Graviton himself starts to realize that somehow he's been drugged. Hawkeye fires some gas arrows at him. He's with Mockingbird. The gas starts to get to Graviton. Graviton does put down some of the gas with his gravity powers, and as he is grandstanding and saying that I've held off twice as many of you at bay. You cannot hope to stop me. You hear? I am Graviton, and the Mickeys finally, with the gas, take their cumulative effect, and Graviton goes down. So these Avengers, who it would be kind of fair to say that this particular group of Avengers is slightly underpowered. Granted, they are only five. It's not the full complement of six that at this point in history we had gotten a little used to. These Avengers basically found a way to take down one of the more powerful Avengers opponents. The press make their way to the site of the battle. The cops take away Graviton as he's knocked out, and the issue ends with the Wackos finally having their barbecue and celebrating the big win over Graviton. Lots of personal issues get discussed during the barbecue. The Vision shows up on FaceTime or Skype or Zoom or whatever it was called in the 80s. Oh, no, it didn't exist. That means this was totally ahead of its time. And via some form of video conference. And the Vision congratulates the Wackos on a job well done. And we end the issue with Hawkeye basically, capping the celebration with the new core group of West Coast Avengers with once an Avenger, always an Avenger. So it's a pretty interesting. The issue ends with the saga of the West Coast Avengers is just beginning. For their further adventures, see Avengers number 250 on sale in 2 weeks. I believe I bought Avengers 250 or came into possession of Avengers 250 almost in real time. And I kind of thought it was cool that there was a West Coast Avengers team. I did not read this miniseries in real time, though, so it was all pretty new to me.
Yeah, see, and whereas I, being an Avengers fan and collecting, pretty much anything Avengers, was definitely reading the main Avengers book. And when this came out, I was like, oh, yep, I got to get this. So I was definitely reading this in real time. But yeah, that is it, folks, for the West Coast Avengers miniseries synopsis. And I don't know, going back on what you're saying is like as them being underpowered. Like, I get what you're saying, but this is team was kind of known as the also rans, the second group, the secondary group, the B team basically. And I don't know, they as power ratings go as far as the Avengers team, like they were fairly balanced out as much as any Avengers team was going to be outside of like the Cookie Quartet, because that was a
Right.
team that was pretty much like no one had. Well, you had two mutants, you had Cap and Hawkeye, so two people without powers and two mutants that had questionable, well, not even questionable, but the most powerful member of that team was basically Scarlet Witch at the time, and she wasn't even fully into her powers.
Yeah, exactly. The way her powers were depicted at that time were very, very different from what we know now.
But,
So, and how they evolved over time. So you are absolutely right. I think that is probably the definition of an underpowered Avengers team. But obviously, Cap made it work.
Yeah, indeed, and obviously the writing also made it work because they dealt with they made the villains at the time suitable to what the team is, and that's kind of how it was.
Exactly.
Except for now, obviously, some would say that this team probably would not fare square up on Graviton or other, but you had Iron Man and Wonder Man, two powerhouses. Then of course you had Hawkeye and Mockingbird and Tigra, wow, who has powers, but from there it kind of goes like, okay, yeah, you got Iron Man and Wonder Man, who's the two most powerful. Then you got Tigra, who was more powerful than Hawkeye and Mockingbird, but not as nowhere near not nowhere near Iron Man
There's
and
big,
Wonder Man.
yeah, I was about to say pretty big gap, right, between the top two.
And then of course
and
you
the
got Hawkeye,
level.
and, who are good at what they do, but
Mm-hmm.
they are just good at what they do. So, and that's kind of how an Avengers team ends up playing out anyway, because it's like there's a lot of times, even with versions of the team with any of these people minus Mockingbird on any given team, it was
Right.
kind of going to be like that, because everybody with the exception of Mockingbird was on a team. Well, I guess with the exception of Jim Rhodes, but that's beside the point because Iron Man was there. There was an Iron Man present. There is some variation in the power level, the quote unquote power level of the whole team. But
Right.
this one's kind
So,
of madness, and
as you
they
said,
only have
this is-
five folks. Anyway.
I was going to add that and of course Roger Stern wrote the story so that they would figure out a way to get to Graviton with a slightly underpowered roster. I definitely understand that the search for a sixth member stretches well into the first 2 years of the follow-up book.
Yep, into the ongoing series. Yeah, it definitely does. In fact, going into the first arc, the first 5 or 6 issues of the book, the Thing was around because he had moved, coming back from Secret Wars later than everybody else did.
Right.
Ended up on the West Coast, and I believe this is when he was in he was wrestling. Or was this before or after that? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. But regardless, he went out west because She-Hulk was on the Fantastic Four, and they didn't, and I don't even think he even told them yet that he was back or whatever. I don't remember how that one played out. But regardless, he came back from Battle World, came out west. So Hawkeye was like, "Yo, we need another big man on the team. So how about you hang out with us and see what's up, And at this point, Hawkeye was like, "Yeah, if we can just get a 6th member and get like a big power force, we'll be felt like we were we won't be seen as the also rans the B team anymore. We'll be like we'll be as good as the other the East Coast branch of the Avengers, and maybe even better or something like that." So going into the ongoing series, that's kind of what Hawkeye's MO was on. But yeah, they definitely was looking for a 6th member, and actually ended up adding, well, they didn't necessarily add a 6th member, or they did end up adding a 6th member, and some folks came and go, and there was also some reservists kind of came and went, and even Moon Knight popped in for a little bit. So who we talked about last week in the Avengers proper book. But
Right.
But yeah, again, like I said, I love the West Coast Avengers. This is pretty much where that all started, and they kind of weaved in and out. They definitely did weave in and out of the main Avengers book around this time. And again, there were also, when they started having annuals, they kind of weaved the annuals together because, you had the East Coast and West Coast team. Why not have them through some stuff together, including a nice two-parter where they were all on the run after a baseball game, and one of their own betrayed them. You know.
There you go. There you go.
But so
So
yeah, thoughts.
Say again.
Thoughts on this whole miniseries. Thoughts.
Oh, my thoughts.
Yes.
Let's see. I can understand why I didn't necessarily gravitate to this, because I probably did see it as the Avengers B team. At this time, I don't recall exactly what I was focused on collecting, although I was a little on the young side. So I definitely was picking up I was doing my best to pick up the original Secret Wars books. I was probably still trying to read G.I. Joe and Transformers and taking a look at Uncanny X-Men here and there, Spidey here and there, Avengers here and there,
Thor.
Hulk here and there, Thor here and there. Right. A lot of my comic book runs I collected later on as back issues, that I completed, like Thor. I definitely did not complete Thor in real time, but I've read some of it in real time, enough of it to be like, this is one of the first things on my list to go back and buy. So I definitely was all over the place when it comes to not collect. Well, I guess collecting, because my reading habits had not yet been fully materialized, and my money sources had not fully materialized, and would not fully materialize for several more years. But that's I can understand why I didn't necessarily gravitate to this. So this was a pleasure to read up front. I definitely got to learn a lot about the team dynamics that I had some exposure to in later issues of the regular series, the regular ongoing series, such as Hawkeye's brand of leadership, his always need to try to one up the East Coast branch, especially whoever was acting as chairman, and especially Captain America, to try to prove that he was worthy of being a chairman and leader of an Avengers group. We also get a refresher on Wonder Man. And I had no idea that they had to do this in the pages of West Coast Avengers, the miniseries proper. And I guess I had just, and we've talked about this before, I'm a student of the OHOTMO, the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, but there's only so many entries you can read and sort of commit to memory. Marvel did a great job with that. And with Wonder Man being, somewhat on steadier ground in terms of his exposure, being part of a regular team book, you would think that his name, that the people would remember his the main parts of his origin story more readily. But you know what? They had to rehash it. They had to recap it here for anyone new to the character. They even had to do it with Tigra. Because I guess the developments for her didn't necessarily happen in the regular pages of Marvel ongoing comics. I don't know if Chiller was a monthly book or if it was like bi-monthly, because I know that they, those things were, a little iffy around that time.
If I remember correctly, so when Chiller, I think, came out in I want to say Chiller came out in late 70s. Don't quote me on that one. I feel like that came out in late 70s.
Right.
Because she was also who ended up being she was Hellcat first, and there's
right.
As a matter of fact, there's a story on that plays out in down the line in the West Coast Avengers ongoing. But she was Hellcat first, and then she ended up becoming Tigra, and I believe that all that plays out in Marvel Chiller, and I think that's from the 70s, and then she ends up on the Avengers, and then and what I was going to say was that Tigra and Wonder Man, not being a part of a team book in a while, they kind of had to, because they hadn't been a part of Avengers in a good minute. So for those who weren't actually a long-time reader of Avengers, they kind of needed that, because they'd have been like, okay, well, who are these other people who, they say they're Avengers, but if you're just coming into it, sure, then you would need to get a little catch up on them. And obviously there's been an Iron Man and Hawkeye and has been around for a minute now. And also, the only other part you wouldn't have known that Hawkeye and Mockingbird got married because of Hawkeye's, miniseries from the year prior to this.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like that, they kind of actually they didn't do that much for. I guess they assumed that people kind of knew that. Well, okay, well they're married and they're newly married, and they don't really address
I mean, yeah, I was about to say that's something that they can just address in like a couple of lines. Be like, you know what, go look at that miniseries.
Yeah, which I don't think they did, but they basically said, yeah, okay, they're married. Boom, there you go, keep pushing.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what I found interesting about this miniseries that I found valuable about reading is like, oh, that really led to some development for Wonder Man. It seems like he was the character. He seemed to be the character that a lot of the character development was based around, at least in the first couple. And I cheated a little bit by reading the first 2 issues of the ongoing after I finished this, just to see where the story ended up going. And it seems like that at least early on in the ongoing run, Wonder Man seemed to be a little bit of a focus of the stories. So that was it was interesting to read. I'll tell you that much. This was something were it not for, and again, we're not shilling, or I'm not shilling for Marvel Unlimited, but if it were not for this would have been a pain in the neck to try to source out. Trying to find back issues or a trade paperback of this. We're not going to talk about illegal ways of getting him, but this is such a valuable resource for looking up history in the Marvel universe. And this was definitely a walk down memory lane for someone who read stuff that was on the periphery of West Coast Avengers.
Yeah,
like Thor and Avengers. So
right, yeah, and actually even around that time I was kind of doing a similar thing, like just like you said earlier with the G.I. Joe to Transformers, but I was mainly like Transformers. I mean, excuse me. Yeah, it was definitely Transformers and G.I. Joe, but also mainly Avengers and religion-related stuff. Like, I think I read a little bit of Cap, but I didn't really collect them like regularly. Iron Man definitely was a collect. Like Hulk and Thor wasn't really on that list unless it was like a crossover or something happening. But it was like mainly Avengers. And then
I was about to say this was Mark Grunwald writing Cap at this time. Although we hadn't gotten to John Walker yet, but this was Mark Grunwald writing Cap, I think. But this is Mike Zeck doing art, and that's what made me buy Cap books, because Zeck's covers were crazy. And obviously, going back to Secret Wars that Zeck did a lot of the art on, yeah, you could tell that he's in a rush. You can tell he's not really the guy to do a team book. That would have been a George Perez masterpiece if he hadn't gotten on the outs with Marvel and moved to DC, by this point. Right. That would have been a dream job to see Perez draw Secret Wars. They would have sold so many toys if that had been the case. But but yeah, this was definitely at least for me a nice walk down memory lane that was very informative, and it was definitely a learning experience for me.
Cool. And my thoughts on the Wackos are very much out there, and it will continue to be out there. So there's not really much else I need to say except for I still continue to love the Wackos. That's all I'm gonna say.
That's cool.
I guess is I don't know, clicks of the week. I guess for I don't know. This was kind of a hard one to do.
I think I'm going to go with issue 4 because I really like the plan they put together.
Yeah.
It really was a way for Roger Stern, the writer, to give us a lesson in how teamwork can make the dream work, and take down, one of these really, overly powered superbads.
Right.
And yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's where OP comes from.
Yes, indeed.
So,
yeah, I would kind of agree with that. And actually, if you think about it, like the whole arc, the whole 4-issue thing, is pretty much reads like if you watch like the beginning arc of say like Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, or actually, yeah, I guess that's probably the best example because actually, now that I think about it, Graviton was in the first couple episodes of that. So they kind of fit. So it's basically the team kind of coming together, kind of not really sure about themselves, but at the end of it, it's like okay, now they got this plan and kind of come. Granted, it comes together a little bit differently because obviously that's it was a different team and slightly different dynamic, but nevertheless, the same thing happens. Like even going into the end of it, it's like yeah, we are the Avengers. We can do this kind of thing. Kind of comes out at the end of it, of like the first couple of episodes of Avengers in Rage, and that kind of stuff kind of happens in like animated series where there's a team dynamic or something like that. So you kind of see this more in that now, if you think about it, and this kind of reads like that, and that's like I was kind of appreciative of how it ended. And again, I just love the Wackos.
I'd like to just add that it was refreshing to see, and this is something that I guess we all sort of grew up on. Shout out to the original Cold Slither podcast crew for that one. It's something you grew up on. We grew up on Avengers characters constantly talking about the information stored in the Avengers files. This is something that is more common in the Avengers books, more so than even in the Fantastic Four, more so than even in the X-Men. All of these supergroups were portrayed as having kept, as the Terminator T-800 would put it, detailed files about some of their past experiences with supervillains and previous encounters by other super people with these supervillains to try to create a database of information on these super villain characters so that they would be able to quickly access what happened, how they were beaten, so on and so forth. So it was refreshing to see that in these issues.
Yeah, they even cross-reference with each other because there's especially around this time there was always a reference of, oh yeah, the Fantastic Four fought X, Y, and Z, so let's cross-reference those. Or they actually talked to somebody who's like, oh yeah, well, I can send you those files, but then like at some point they had them all cross-referenced to kind of cut out some of that, and like, oh yeah, well, I'll just cross-reference this with SHIELD stuff also. So they always have the files there, and it's like, oh yeah, let's pull that up and bada.
Yep. There was a time, man, where that felt like the coolest thing. Like, oh wow, they have their computers connected.
Exactly. I was like, oh snap. Yeah, it was like, or it's either that because I think if I'm not mistaken, it's like Marvel Team Up was also going on around this time. Also, it was like, oh yeah, me and Spidey, or me and the Thing went up against X, Y, and Z, around this time. So and that's in the files or something else like that. What happened? It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's like, yeah, there's all this connectivity going on in this thing. It was really cool to see. So
yeah, little did we know, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
Little did we know. Now they'd be like, wait a second, let me check my phone.
Yeah, really. In fact, I'm pretty sure. I feel like there's an issue of like Miles or somebody like that who probably actually did something like that recently, or probably back in the Champions days or something. Not the Champions days, not like that was that long ago. But so, but yeah, you got any other final thoughts on this before we've seen this on home?
No, I'm good.
Okay, cool, bean. Yeah, that's it. This has been, like I said, I love this. I love doing this. I love reading this again. Like I can't say I've read it in a minute, but. Yeah. Or at least some part of West Coast Avengers I would have read, on some sort of basis. But it's always a joy to come into because I love the Wackos. Anyway, we're gonna round this out with an ad read. Oh, I didn't say I was basically going on with you on issue 4 as Mike look at it also.
Oh. There you go. Just before I read the last ad for the night, I just wanted to tease next week with some luck. And when I say some luck, I'm relying on the wacky. And obviously, I've joked about this before, about the wacky delivery schedule that we have gotten from Amazon and other online retailers as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Hopefully, I'm able to get some flight stands for action figures delivered to me in time for me to show off a new display when I am at home in my home office on next week's episode. So stay tuned. Tune in to next week's Comic Book Chronicles to see the unveiling. I'm not going to unveil it. It's just going to be over my shoulder, or I'll turn off the virtual background to show it off. So I'll have a new figure display / diorama. So tune in next week. Our last ad read of the night is for Amazon. Keep our podcast free by shopping at Amazon. The people who I was just complaining about their delivery schedule. Visit cspn.us, then click the Keep Our Podcast Free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down and click on the Amazon link to shop. Purchase items from Amazon as you normally would, whether it's books, music, electronics, jewelry, apparel, or action figure flight stands. For every purchase made on Amazon through our link, Amazon sends the CSPN payment that helps us keep the Comic Book Chronicles podcast free for our listeners at no extra cost to you. Amazon.com through CSPN.us. Do it today.
And as we come to the end of another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles, I'd like to thank each and every one of you folk for coming out. Next week, I think we'll be back to new releases again, because it's like there's going to be enough for us to do.
Yes.
And with that, I have been Roddykat. You can find me at Roddykat on Twitter. You can also find me at News and Need on Twitter. You can also find me at CPCaps on Instagram. Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram. PC_dirt on Twitter, Pop Culture Net on Twitter, popculturenetwork.com, and all the umbrella sites they're in, and also the Vine Alternative Byte, BYTE, under comic reviews, no vowels. Tim, DOGG98 on Twitter, CB Cron on Twitter, which is the Comic Book Chronicles Twitter account. You can go say, hey, we like the show. Hey, we don't like the show, except for don't say that. Don't be nice. But hey, if you got questions or anything, hey, you can also, add that, and we'll get around to it.
If it's healthy criticism, we will listen and take it under advisement.
There we go. Exactly. CB Cron, like I said, on Twitter, The Click Nation on Twitter, TheKlickNation, theclicknation.com, and also Tim can be found over at Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off. You can find this here podcast on the Cold Slither Podcast Network, CSPN.us.
Do it today.
You'll be joining us soon. Also, like I said, continue to check out that Hasbro. Hopefully, they'll put on that Cold Slither show on their Hasbro's YouTube channel. I've been enjoying watching those things, even though I got the full set of G.I. Joe DVDs like right here next to me. Anyway, you can also find this here podcast, and that is not a sponsor. Also, we do not sponsor. We're not getting sponsored by Hasbro. We're not getting sponsored by G.I. Joe or Marvel Unlimited at all. Just put that out there. You can also find this here podcast on your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, Spotify, and the Coastal Podcast Network SoundCloud page. That's it, folks. We'll be back next week when we record on Thursday nights, 9:30ish p.m. We got a little late start tonight, but the audio will come out on those places we just mentioned, and I'm putting my head back like I got some kind of physical things that y'all can see. I don't know why, but regardless, Thursday night, 9:30 p.m., the Click Nation's YouTube channel where we record. Come check us out and watch the videos there, or listen to the audio, or listen to the videos later at some date at your perusal. This has been the Comic Book Chronicles.
Peace.
I love it when a plan comes together.